Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Black Sails rewatch, where we are watching Black Sails again. For me, it's the second time, and for my second person here, who is Kyle Entertainment,
Teamed
introduce
co-host.
yourselves and co-host. Yes. Um,
Well, everybody, fuck Bacon, he's gone. I'm here now, and we're watching Black Sails. It is also my second time through. Um, and I've
Very
never gotten to
exciting.
talk about the show with anybody ever. Nobody's
Yeah,
ever
because
come
no
into
one
my
watches
chat
it.
and been Black Sails, let's talk about it. I've got Minty for Mad Men. I've got, I don't know, Miller and everybody for Berserk. Nobody's seen Boardwalk Empire either. Sad times. I don't even think maybe one time I had a Sopranos bloke show up. Everybody's watching House of the Dragon, though, but that's the last we're going to say
Yep.
on that. But Black Sails, nobody watches it. Criminally underrated. That's what everybody says about the show.
Yep.
The greatest
And they're
show
right.
nobody's watched except for us, and we're here to talk about it. Because I think it does have a small die-hard fan base, so let's tap into that resource here on the Ordinary RE channel, not Secondary
Yes.
RE, like I've been saying sometimes.
Absolutely.
But
So,
yes, we're
okay,
here.
yes, and we're going to be going through every season, so season by season. So we should have 4 videos on this. And because it is a rewatch, we have seen it all, and we're going to talk about it all. So it's going to be complete
Yes,
spoilers.
spoilers
So yeah,
everywhere.
don't watch this as your first like watch through or anything.
As a companion piece, do not.
Absolutely. So I guess firstly, in terms of what is in season one, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who just have.
Yeah.
I mean, if people are watching this, which I guess we'll see how many people watch this, but it's probably been a while. But we've got Flint killing Singleton, who's the guy like in episode one that is like contesting Flint's captainhood. We get Vane and Flint both trying to hunt down Silver, who has the map for the treasure, the Urca de Lima, which is the ship with the treasure. Um, we have Max, who is raped, and then Vane's men have a taboo placed on them by Eleanor. We get Flint's crew fighting the ship with the slaves on it. We have Billy falling off the ship. We have Vane going back to the big slave man who used to own him and then killing him. We get Vane returning and taking Hornigold's fort and forcing Eleanor to bend to any demands he has. And then we get Flint killing Gates, and then Dufresne trying to relieve Flint of duty. And then the season ends with the Walrus, which is Flint's ship, being destroyed by the man of war. And then they wash up on the beach where the Urca de Lima has crashed. And that's where the season ends.
Flint
So,
sees the gold, and his eyes sparkle.
yeah, absolutely. And what a way to. What a
Indeed.
season.
A lot
um,
happens in 8 episodes. 8 long episodes, mind you.
yeah. So, what do you think? Overall thoughts? What do you think?
Now, Black Sails, what an interesting series. Now, I have commonly said, now, hold on. The thing
Mm,
about Black Sails to say is that season one is the worst season, and like every season gets better after each season. Um, I've
yep, I hear
always
that a
said
lot.
that was wrong. Going back, I think that might be right. Now, there's a few things that get
Interesting.
into this, and I don't want to shoehorn the beginning of this with 17 Kyle monologues because I'm
Mm.
trying to be better at that. Um, there's, I guess I don't know if I want to say much more at the beginning. It's definitely great. There are incredible moments, incredible characters, incredible performances. It looks incredible. Um, I feel like there's a lot of, it's the least focused season, I guess I would say. There's a lot of like one-off, like all the one-off episodes of Black Sails I can really think of are in this one, like them cleaning the ship for an episode, or
Mm.
the two-parter chasing after a boat with the guns on it that they need for the thing, or even the Vane goes back to weird giant
Big
man
man.
Viking
Yeah.
potential bloke who definitely looks like Braun Strowman for all the wrestling fans in the audience. Um, these all feel like the one-off episodes I remember, and if I think of like season 2, 3, or 4, I feel like it's all like continuous, and I can't really think of
Yep.
singular episodes like that. And usually I like that. Usually I would say like I love the slice of life elements. I love just the characters hanging out. Um, some of the characters aren't the characters yet though, because obviously they will grow and sort of the best
Yeah.
incarnations of their characters will come later. I an interesting thing I put in my notes is I actually don't think that for Silver. I think this might be my favorite Silver.
Oh
And I think
wow.
the first 2 seasons might be this is a big thing. I don't like Silver that much, especially
Yep.
later
Okay.
on. But I think well, I don't know. Should I do my three favorite characters? Flint, Eleanor, and Max. And I think the first few seasons might be my favorite Eleanor stuff. Though I really like the season 3 stuff, and then in season 4, um, she dies. I think in episode 6. We said we were spoiling shit.
Yeah.
So she's not in it for all that long. I do like her ending and stuff like that. And this is by far my least favorite Max stuff. But
Mm. Well, all right.
she is definitely
How
a
much of the
character to
future
go.
do you remember?
Oh, that was actually the thing I wanted to talk about first. There were a bunch of little things that I remembered completely wrong, and some of my favorite moments I remembered wrong, which happens sometimes with me. Which
Hmm.
might be specifically episode 7. Which I watched the last 2 today. Episode 7. I don't want to say soured me because I would still say it was like great, but there were
Hmm.
certain elements that I remember liking a lot more than I liked on the rewatch, and I specifically think that might be because it's a rewatch. But we'll get into all of this as we progress.
Yep.
Um, what was I saying at the beginning? Oh, the little changes. There were a bunch of things like I didn't remember that like the Urca was crashed and the Man of War was a different ship. I just remembered in
Mm.
my brain they attack it, and I thought it was the Urca ship that they attacked, which was
Yep.
the Man of War. Um, I remembered the classic fart joke being on the beach when it's actually on the ship. These are all just things from
Mm.
today, but there were little things like that where I was like, oh, that is slightly different than I remember.
Yep.
But in general, all the big things I think I remember pretty exactly. It's only been like it can't have been more than 2 years since I watched the show.
Yeah.
Um,
So
uh,
I
yeah,
guess
I'll
in
hand
terms
it
of
off
my
to you now.
thoughts, I watched it in like the end of 2018. So it's
Mm.
been quite a while, and in terms of like what I remember, I don't like I remember the big details of later seasons more than I remember stuff here, I think. But there definitely was stuff that I remembered quite well, especially that big man. I remember just remember
Mm.
remembering him for some reason.
He's memorable.
And yeah, the characters I mainly remembered. I think immediately like so you were saying how um season 1 like you're kind of more agreeing with like how it gets better over time and you get more into it. But for me, I definitely held that view before, and I think I've done the complete opposite now, where I think
Mm.
season 1 is really great. And like as soon as I watched the first episode, I was immediately in. Like I think it might have even just been the music. Like when the music started playing, I'm like, oh, I remember this music. It's so good.
The intro
And it
song is
just
so fucking good.
it
It might
is,
be my
and
favorite one ever.
yeah, and it just got me
The
right back
TV
into
show, at
it.
least.
But what else have I got? Overall thoughts. Um, so I had this thought I had, which is that I think for me, the show is at one level of quality and like one level of enjoyment now, and then I think the next big bump in like enjoyment is when Blackbeard arrives and his story onwards. Like I
Mm.
think for me, that's really where my enjoyment like goes to the next level. But I don't know. Still, at the moment, I like it a lot. Um,
I think mine is at the very. I think season 2 is immediately it. I think the first like Vane, Flint, like because I guess the season kind of teases the Vane Flint conflict, and then it teases them teaming up, and both those
mhm.
things don't happen until season 2. I think Blackbeard is the first episode of season 3 is his introduction. Yeah, I think he died.
Yeah.
No, he dies at the very beginning of season 4. I think.
Oh, I
But
don't
yeah,
remember anything. I remember his death. My goodness. But
yes.
my final overall thought is that I've had some changes in like how much I like characters. I would say
Mm.
that Flint is still the same. Like he's easily my favorite still to watch. Um,
True and based.
I would say that Silver has gone down, but
Uh
I think
oh.
it's because he doesn't do much here, which why I was interested when you said that you like him more now than what he becomes. But I'll be interested to see what you think about him. And especially Eleanor and Vane have gone up a lot. In my first
Vane
watch
did go up
through,
for me too.
yeah, like I was surprised how much character stuff he had going on because I just remember him being cool. Is my main takeaway from my
Yeah,
first watch. I was like, oh, it's Vane, a legendary pirate, blah blah blah. But you know, he's a man, a broken man. And Eleanor's great.
and
But
a
that's it.
simp. But we'll talk
A
about
what?
that later.
A
And a
snip?
simp.
Oh, simp.
SIMP.
Yes,
Um,
he is.
but that is my
Um,
favorite character trait of him, so I'm not making fun of him. But because
yeah,
me too, brother, me too. But
yeah.
oh, because I think the pilot for me might be my favorite episode in this season, which is interesting. Because rewatching the pilot, I felt like exactly the same way. I had those two big scenes that I remember loving a lot that impacted me so much the first time and hooked me on the show immediately, which I'll talk about in maybe a video that might be up, or probably maybe might not be up. but I'm making a Black Sails pilot video, which is the I guess we're talking about standout scenes now because I did still
Yeah,
write them
yeah.
down as
Go
standout
ahead.
scenes. What a transition! I'm just great at this thing.
Mm,
Which is the Eleanor introductory scene and the Flint I am your king scene. Two
mm,
very big, dense characterization scenes that I like a lot. So I would say the pilot lived up. Um, I maybe it was just episode 7 where it was like because some my other favorite scenes from this season is the forehead kiss scene with Flint and
mm,
Eleanor, and I remembered the Flint Gates flashback at the end of that episode before we cut back to Vane, to end the episode. I just remember loving that scene where it was like so Gates like gets the nod off from Flint, and then we see a flashback to him
mm.
and Dufresne, and he's got Dufresne in on it, and they basically agree to kill Flint. And then he nods back, and the music swells, and it's like,
Oh, it's
oh,
so
they're
great.
both playing each other. And I remember
Yeah,
thinking that it was so great, and I remember loving it so much, but I
yeah.
just didn't feel anything this time. I was
Oh
like,
man,
oh, it was too
I
quick,
felt it
and it
for you.
wasn't
Don't
as
worry.
dramatic as I remembered, and especially with the Eleanor kiss scene. And now I guess we'll get into one of my bigger talking points. It's not
Mhm.
that big. It's just why I think those, or should I say my other standout scenes? No, I should say this first, and then I'll get back to my
Yeah, yeah.
standout
Go ahead.
scenes. I think those might be because they're very subversive, and because I already know where they're going. I don't know. And maybe
Mm.
it was just my mood today. I don't know, but I did like episode 8 a lot. Um, it's just
Mhm.
like the whole season teases kind of, especially in the pilot and then little bits throughout. It teases the Eleanor Flint relationship, and I remember the first time through being like, oh, it's so obvious, like easy drama love triangle with Vane. Vane's like the ultimate simp. Flint is kind of not, and him
Mm.
being with Eleanor now. Oh, the drama. It's coming in the future. Obviously, you find out that Flint don't really swing that way. Though I guess he technically does, so it doesn't make that him and Eleanor impossible.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, and then the forehead kiss, I was like, oh, what a subversion. And he walks out, and they have the long pause where it looks like they're gonna kiss, and they even do the classic like, we're in this together. We're the only ones that understand each other. It's like, oh, it's perfect. They're perfect
Mm.
for each other. And this obviously is called back to in the final scene because Eleanor dies talking to Flint. Um, even though they haven't spoken in like a season and a half, and that calls back to them being the same, but doesn't call back to the 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 non-romance here. But I remember just thinking that scene was like, oh, how like what a subversion. Then it plays back into it in like episode 5 of season 2, which I think is the right episode when it's revealed that Flint is gay, or at least
Yeah.
bi, um, and it all
Which I
plays into
think,
that. It's like, oh,
yeah,
what a recontextualization of my favorite thing.
yeah. That
But
that
yeah,
reveal like changes how I like when I'm watching this. I always see Flint through that lens
there's a
now,
lot of
basically.
foreshadowing stuff. It's really
Yeah.
good. Um,
Um. Yeah.
But just and tying this point into the Gates scene, I don't know. I just remember the Gates flashback to the Dufresne thing being like longer, and same with the Eleanor scene. I remember Eleanor and Flint both like walking through the bar and like long shots of them walking down long corridors and sort of, I don't know. I just remember that scene so differently, and instead it's like she just finds Flint and then like she offers Flint to like sleep, I guess in the back where customers don't go, so nobody will see him all drunk and shit. And then
Mm.
they walk up to each other, and then he just walks out. I don't know. I remembered it differently, and I guess I've fallen in love revisiting that memory over and over again and replaying the
Mm.
scene in my brain without actually watching it. So it's gotten out of hand. Um, but in replace of those scenes, there are other scenes that I've liked more. Um,
Yes. What are they? Well, what's your
but
standout moment,
yes.
standout scenes?
Hold on. I didn't have the Word document up. I had sticky notes, so I didn't forget to talk
Very
about
good.
this. Now, incredible scenes. No, that's incredible performances. Standout scenes. Eleanor introduction. I am the king. Vane and Flint meeting. The initial meeting about them teaming up.
Mm.
Um, it's just great. The cutaways with Gates and him having to leave every time. Flint, like after it seems like everything's done, then bringing up what about the other dude that he killed. Just Vane, just Flint sticking up for his boys there. Um, and just being and the dichotomy of thinking Vane is going to be the crazy one who can't agree to anything, but
Mm.
him and Eleanor even have that moment in that scene of like, are you as surprised as anybody that I'm the only one behaving myself here? And they give each other the eyes.
Yep.
Great
Just
stuff
trying to
all
impress
around,
her.
indeed. I don't know if he's trying to impress her. He just does impress her because they're in love, kind of. Not really, maybe. Yes,
Yeah,
kind
that's a
of.
yeah.
Then I have, and this is maintained, anything with Hornigold. I don't know why I like him so much. I just always have, and people really don't. Even Blind Wave would always like cheer when he would get fucked over or whatever. I was always
Oh
like,
wow.
man, my boy Hornigold didn't do nothing wrong, and he gets everything taken from him, and he eventually gets killed and joins with the army when they attack the thing at the end of season 3, and Flint kills him and everything. And he is colored definitely more of a bad guy later on. He hands over Eleanor. But yeah, anything with Hornigold, especially his introduction scene with Gates and the I'm listening to him scene, which is one of the scenes I don't vaguely, I clearly remember bringing this up on a stream to you and being like, this is one of my favorite lines in the whole show. And you're like, I don't remember that scene at all. So we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
And then all the Flint and Gates heart-to-hearts are really good. Anytime Flint monologues is really good. And any scene with the fuck you Jack is pretty great. There's a bunch of Anne and Vane fuck you Jacks that are always just great. I think the last one in the last episode, Jack says it with Anne as she says fuck you Jack. It's a great
Yep.
I remembered a scene that I forgot to write down. And it's Flint confronting Barlow and the to apologize to England, and it's the first like insight into Flint's true motivations of just wanting to take down England and everything that entails, and the way it's acted in that scene. It's just so great. That's like the lifeblood of the series. It's the lifeblood of Flint's character. It's the greatest fucking thing you've ever seen. And then her final line, like, if he was here, he would agree with me. And like, I remember the first time hearing that line and being like, man, the intrigue. What a great fucking tease foreshadow. That will be followed up on next season. Great stuff all around. I really do like the Barlow actress's acting always. It's always really good. And I forgot that we saw her naked, and I was pleasantly remembered and surprised. Pleasantly surprised to remember. Pleasantly surprised. I know what I was trying to say.
I know what
you see
saying,
Eleanor naked. I'd forgotten about that too. I remember Max naked. We're seeing everybody out here.
A lot of nudity.
Indeed. But those are my standout scenes. Your turn to monologue.
All right. Murray. A good choice. Well, mine is not much of a monologue. I've only got a few. So my first standout thing is that just basically everything Flint does, I love.
True and base.
Like he's just the best character. He's the most charismatic. Like when he's speaking, I'm just listening to him. Really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he's no Oscar, but he's pretty good.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, Flint, basically everything. The two specific Flint scenes I really like when he... I guess the first one, which is what you already mentioned, which is him and Miranda arguing about like what they're doing on this island, basically, and he's talking about how when I grant them my forgiveness, like that. What a great scene. The other one is when Flint kills Gates and then immediately regrets it, and he's like holding him, and he's really sad about it, and like he's become the monster that England like saw him as, and it's just like sad, like what has he done, you know? So I love Flint there.
I don't really see it like that, but perhaps we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we will definitely talk about that. So the other two things I've got is that I really like the scene where Vane has a vision or dream of Eleanor, and he like starts crying basically. I thought that was really cool, and we'll definitely talk about that. And I don't remember. Yeah, the vulnerability is really interesting. I didn't remember that at all. But I don't remember what episode this was. Maybe it was 7 or maybe it was 6. The Storm episode, where it's just an entire episode where it's storming both on Nassau and on the ship. And
I think that's
just
the beginning of 8.
The beginning of it. Well, the thing is, it's an entire episode, and it's just directed so well. Like, I really feel like it's a storm, and I thought it was so impressive. Like, I don't even know how they did it, but I'm very impressed.
You know, there's a scene in season 3 that you're probably not misremembering, but there is a bigger storm episode in season 3. I don't know if you remember that, but
I don't remember a storm at all.
And then they end up getting they're set adrift or whatever, where they can't move and they nearly starve.
Oh yes, I definitely remember that episode. Yeah.
And there's like a shot where Flint has to like cut off the top of the mast, and there's like blokes still up there, and they fucking fly off. Crazy stuff. But yeah, that is a whole storm episode. Because I think what you're thinking of is just like the first 30 minutes of the last episode.
No, definitely not. This is it's one of them is a whole episode. I went back and I checked.
I promise you, this is at the beginning of episode 8. I would.
All right, we'll have a look.
because that's how
Alright.
the Urka crashes. At
Yes,
the
that
end
is
of
a good
episode
point,
8, they're
actually.
like,
That is a good point.
we failed to account for the weather, Silver says. What a cool bloke this Silver is. Too
Alright,
bad he
alright,
gets
alright.
shit later on. When he gets serious.
Yeah,
Gets
when
a
he loses his
girlfriend.
leg, right?
Uh-huh.
So let's get into it. That's our 25-minute long introduction.
It's gonna be a long
So
one.
okay, wait. Is there anything else you want to talk about in the intro, or
I mean, there's
should
a
we go
million
straight
things
into
that
it?
could fit in, but I think
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
save them.
Let's get started. So the way we're going to break this down into storylines is what we've kind of said. So we'll see how it
Storyline
goes.
/ characters kind of thing. Yep.
Yeah, pretty much. So the first one, what we're going to talk about is the stuff going on Flint, or with Flint and his ship, basically. So how should we do this? Because I could go through my notes, I guess, and whenever you want to say something, you can take over and talk about it, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do that way.
All right. So the first thing I've got is just the opening scene of the show. I thought that was so cool how you're seeing these pirates and they're coming in and taking over this man's ship, and they're trying to like put up this appearance of like giving, or like kind of presenting themselves the way that England sees them, like some scary myth, basically. And then in the next scene after the opening, you see that they're not these scary people; they're just normal people. Like with the like initially, what you first meet them with the black guy, and he's got his teeth and it's all sharp, and the next scene he takes them out, and I just thought that's so cool. What like an interesting subversion, because
he
like
jumps out.
Yeah. So the thing is that we know, because we've already seen the show, and maybe because if we heard anything about it beforehand, that they're just normal people. But if you're watching this for the first time with no context, and you just see that opening scene, you could easily see that this is a completely different show to what it ends up being. And I think it's just really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first episode is very much, I think, about subversion. So he like jumps out in that opening scene, the bloke you're talking about, and he's super scary. He's got his teeth, and you're like, oh shit, some scary shit. And then immediately in like the next scene, it's like Gates walking through and being chummy and cracking jokes, and then he jumps out again and does it again, and Gates is like, grow up or something, and it's like some undercutting really funny like line. It's like, oh, it like completely like completely humanizes that bloke, and he like laughs and like flaps his hand, and it walks off or something. It also is interesting because you do feel, because I remember watching that scene for the first time, and you are like scared of the pirates, and you're like, man, these are some menacing blokes. And it's interesting, and it's all really just a exercise in perspective. Because like whenever the Flint crew is in danger or something, you're like, man, if only we had like the energy of like that first scene back again. And it was like, oh, we just have this, because at that time you're like, oh, this scary bloke, kill anybody, throw him into anything, and he'll win the day for us. And it's like, oh, it's like now that he's on our side, it's like we can think, because that's not like Black Sails didn't invent this, showing like the main guys from a different perspective to open or something. I feel like I've seen that in a bunch of other things. And it always is that sobering, like, it's portrayed as super strong at the beginning, and then like later you wish you had. I feel like this is in Game of Thrones with like Rob or something, where initially he's like super strong, and you're like, man, when we need him, he's like, it's like a switch in perspective of like, oh no, like that's just like from the other perspective you see that he's this strong, when really they're just a bunch of normal blokes. But yeah, super cool. The intro scene is, especially when you watch it the first time, it's like, man, these production values are kind of off the charts for this show that nobody's watched, apparently. How did they get all this money?
It's a good looking show overall. Like I don't know how they do it.
Especially cool and everything.
I think just the scale of the exactly the scale of the ships and how they're shooting, and it just looks so good in the ocean. And I think it's like completely CGI at most points, but it just looks so good. And even like seeing Nassau and the scale of like the environments there, it's just impressive.
Even for the Vane thing in episode 7, where it's like this one shot, we only ever visit that place one time, and like they've clearly built out like a whole thing, and there's like 100 extras in the background. And you're like, how much did this fucking cost? What the hell?
Yep.
But yeah,
for 8 episodes,
insane production values. But yeah.
All right,
I did have a note on that that thingy, that the subversion jump out thing that I was going to include in the video, so that's why I was like, oh yes, I have a bit to say about the bloke jumping out, but I ended up cutting that from the video because I wanted to focus it away from just being about subversion to two separate scenes. But
perfect.
You'll see the video when you see the video, chat. But keep going, keep going.
It'll come out before this video, I'm sure. So the what is next? So I guess next is to talk about the king, like Flint saying that he's going to be a king, basically. So it's to Billy in episode 1. He says, "If we are to survive, then we must be behind a king. I am your king." So I think you have a lot more to say about this than I do. I mean,
it's the greatest scene I ever saw with my two little eyes, but yes.
So what's so good about this? Okay, firstly, before you say anything, I guess, is to me, it's. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, and I'm sure if you remember more of what happens later, it's probably more interesting. But it feels like to me that he's just lying, basically. That maybe this is a truth Flint is telling himself, but he doesn't really want to be a king, obviously, of these pirates. He just wants to destroy England is his motivation. But maybe I'm completely misremembering. But what do you think? Correct me. Give me your explanation of what you think.
Flint is what we would call an arrogant man, but
Yeah.
I love that about him so much. I guess I'm kind of spoiling the video, but my point in the video is that like Billy is like teetering away from him the whole episode. He's like, man, this Flint prick, he like nearly betrays him in the Guthrie scene. In that episode as well, where like he tells Billy to like put his gun on Guthrie, and he puts his gun on Flint. And he's like, well, fuck you. What are we doing here? And because Flint is a liar. He's the most ambitious man. He's lying to the crew. Fuck him. They don't know what's in their best interest. I will take all the burden on. I will expend them sometimes, even for my selfishness, which is something the character Morley hits on later, where he accuses good men of dying for the Barlow Woman's agenda and things like that. All great scenes in their own right. But for Flint to, like, Billy has all these doubts, and, like, he believes those doubts, and he's got a sound reason for all these doubts. If you're from Billy's perspective, this Flint guy probably isn't best for you. But for him to so convincingly give this monologue and like tell, and the line before he says, "I'm your king," is Billy saying, "We have no kings here because we're pirates. Fundamentally, we don't have a king." That's like the whole point. We declare ourselves away from the monarchies of Spain and England, who are the superpowers at this time in the world. That's how they define themselves. And for him to say, "I am your king," and for Billy to like completely buy it, and be won over by it is just like the coolest moment. And like in watching that scene for the first time and watching that scene every time since, it's like, yeah, I buy it too. It's like, God, this Flint prick, he's the greatest. He could convince us to do anything. Now Billy has sobering realizations about this increasingly, and it ends up kind of being Billy that fucks Flint in the end by making Silver the sort of king of the pirates-esque character at the end of season 3. But yeah, it's just like, and I think Flint does legitimately he probably doesn't want a crown and to sit on his chair or something, but he believes fundamentally that he needs to be the leader of all the pirates, the king of them, to lead them.
Okay, so
to destroy England, yeah.
So, okay, more on this, because my next note is all about me not really remembering what happens with Flint in the future and trying to understand, like, what does he want, really? So I've got, like, a few notes here that I want to bring up, and you can tell me what you think. So the first one is that at some point, he tells Eleanor that he wants to... Essentially, the whole gist of his story with Eleanor is that his idea is that he wants to build Nassau into a real nation that can defend itself. And he brings up that essentially him and all the other pirates and people on Nassau would settle for a pardon, titles to land, and a governor that they can trust. And to me, that... like he doesn't want a pardon. So to me, this just feels like a straight up lie. So I don't feel like maybe not even a lie. Maybe it's like a half truth where Flint just wants to be happy, but at the same time he wants to burn down England. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what is he? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think he wants to be happy. I think he just wants to get his revenge on England. And it's bigger than that, because it's not just like a vengeance mission to kill the specific people in England that fucked him over. But this is said, and this is... there's one Black Sails video on YouTube. I think the creator's name is Rowan Ellis. This is a good video. She's clearly a very RedTube-esque channel. And she's the first one that really opened my eyes to this. And then you realize, and it's absolutely true, this is like the biggest SJW show to ever exist. It's about like gay people and women and slaves and black people and like former slaves, and all the white characters come from terrible beginnings. There's a monologue later in like one of the greatest episodes of the show where Jack Rackham, who is like, I guess the closest thing to a straight white male lead that comes from like sort of a normal, non-deeply traumatic background, where he goes on this monologue about how his father was like a shoe shop worker or something, I don't remember if it was specifically shoes, and that he got fucked over, and then and then he like drank himself to death, and Jack got like laid with his debt, and Jack had to basically run away and become a pirate because he couldn't, because he would have gone to jail for not paying the debt or something. And he's talking to, how am I forgetting his name? But like the main bad guy at the end, Eleanor's husband,
Yep.
Rogers is his name. And he's like basically, because Rogers is kind of like, he's like kind of a good guy, and then he's like talking down to the pirates, and he's like, you don't need to be criminals or whatever. And Jack basically makes the point in that scene that like, well, fuck you, we both got to this position where we're both like fighting on equal terms for Nassau. This is when Jack's captured, I think. But he basically points out that I started a million miles behind you, because Rogers' father was like a big Navy officer, and he's part of the nobility and everything. It's basically like, and because Flint says that in that scene, he's like, civilization is coming. And this idea of civilization being basically the white patriarchy, the white straight male patriarchy coming down on everybody, who threw Flint away for being gay, and threw Thomas away for being gay, and threw Barlow out for basically being polyamorous or whatever. Or I guess she's not bi, but and like everybody like, oh fuck. Oh, I thought my fucking my laptop just went black. I freaked out because I'm like, no, we're not flat yet. But no, it's just gone to sleep. But Eleanor is a woman who would never get any respect outside of this place, so she has to be in this place to have power. Max is exactly the same, a former slave. Scott and his whole colony of like escaped slaves, and everybody like this. Silver is like an orphan. Rackham again had to run away. Anne is a female pirate who used to be basically a sex slave. Like they're all from these like completely different, like fucked over by civilization background, and pirates are sort of representative of these outcasts. So it's sort of like the rage against a system that's impossible to beat. And this is an important part, is that this is a historical fiction. We know that they can't win, and sort of them fighting inevitably forever against, and this like rage, and Flint's rage in the face of this, and like the confidence he inspires in you despite knowing better that he could win, that if he got this gold, he could cultivate this country, and he could like, and later on when him and Blackbeard and Vane are all on the same side and they're creating like an army, like, man, these blokes are so cool, maybe they could fuck them up or whatever. And even they get some victories over England, like at the end of season 3, he says like, tell your governor, tell him I'm coming or whatever, as he beats them on the island. It's like, man, this Flint bloke, I want to see him succeed so bad, but he's just not going to, and he's just not backing down. He says, like, to apologize to England, to apologize to this structure that fucks over him for no reason, and everybody he knows, and all these pirates basically for no reason. It's like, man. Because even, like, Hornigold and Gates are like, because I don't know English history that well at this time, but they're like former Navy officers, just like Flint, who were on, like, the wrong side of a civil war, I think. And because Hornigold makes that comment in his introduction scene where he's like, oh, I keep telling my men, who are all apparently former Navy guys, that like one day they will fight for their king again, for their rightful king again, against this tyrannical false kingship in England or something. And it's like, oh, these are all like displaced people, and that have been fucked over by like 16th century society in ways they like. Systemic change is not coming. The slaves are not going to be free. America's barely started their slavery at this point. America will come along and promise freedom and then have slavery for another 150 years. So if for any of our black characters in the show, even if you're like, maybe like Silver could get away with living a happy life or something, there is nowhere for like the black characters to live a happy life unless they create something on Nassau, and or Scott creates what he tries to create with the his I guess colony on that secret island and stuff that's introduced in season 3. But yeah, that all ties into something. Flint's ambition here to like burn down England and see it destroyed for like, and it's so just, and it's also funny because like obviously Australia is not a thing yet, but it only becomes a thing, and we only become a thing. I assume Ari is like a British descendant or something. I don't know what he is. But at least for me, it's like me rooting against my own like birth. Like if Flint succeeds, I'm never born in this moment. I'm like, fuck it, do it. Like I love this man. Go ahead. It's like, I don't know. It's all these. The historical fiction definitely plays into it, of like the fact that this is like impossible. but he still makes you believe, and that's sort of what's happening with Billy in this scene. It's like impossible, but you can't help but believe this. He's so determined to do it. And I guess his overall conflict is brought up in that Barlow confrontation where he's like, where she's like, this doesn't end how you think it ends, and we can have a peaceful, happy life. All you have to do is like swallow your pride and apologize, and that is what he ends up doing at the very end when Silver undermines the whole thing they've built and basically undercuts it all and makes it so it can't happen. And Flint is very mad, but he then offers Flint, like, Thomas is still alive somewhere, and Flint basically decides to give up and just go and live with Thomas in the end. So that's all there in the first season, which is kind of impressive. And I only thought about that when I watched the Barlow scene today or yesterday. But did that come around somewhere?
So okay, firstly, that's all really interesting. And I definitely want to check out that video you were talking about. So I think that answered it because my initial question was like, what is driving
what does
Flint?
Flint want?
Yeah, and I think you made it very clear that
It's
the whole show seems to be about justified hatred, trying to struggle for something that is unachievable, really. But I think it's
the world.
Yeah, so he really does want to change. Yeah, I guess changing the world is the best way to put it. He really does want to change the world. Cool. All right. You answered it.
He wants to create Vinland, all right? He wants to have a place free from the rest of the world. He wants to create his own little place.
But he's doing it out of hatred, which is interesting.
Yes. Very, very much not like our boy Thorfinn.
Okay, so on this similar point, this is a very minor thing, but it's something I'd never realized on my first watch. But at one point, it's revealed that this, like, Nassau and the whole of the Bahama Islands is owned or in charge, or the person in charge is Alfred Hamilton, who's like that. I remember him. He was like the guy who, like, he was Thomas's dad, right? And then he is the guy that Flint kills on the boat. Essentially, he's like this big evil, basically, Alfred Hamilton. And I just thought it was really interesting that he was the one in charge of these islands. Now, do you remember if that ever comes back at all? Yeah, because, like, I feel like it's a big deal, isn't it? Like, in this point, they bring it up, and it's like, oh, Alfred Hamilton, the Lord Proprietor of the Bahama Islands. And it just so happens that Flint is here, and, like, yeah.
Because Nassau is just one of those islands. I guess it makes sense. That's why, like, that's where Miranda and Flint are sent to, though I don't think they're sent there. I think they're just sent out of London in exile. I don't remember. Yeah. I guess we'll have to get into that.
I just wonder, like, if this adds an extra dimension to Flint wanting to create a nation here.
Specifically
like this
here,
is, specifically where Alfred is the one in charge. And
though I think, there's already, like, a pirate. I feel like when Flint gets exiled, the pirates have already taken over Nassau. Because I feel like I think the first flashback we get at the beginning of season 2 is him walking around with Thomas, basically saying that, like, oh, Nassau is in disrepair. They, like, decapitated their last governor or whatever, and the pirates now have it. So the opportunity might have already been there. Just quickly, this is still on Flint, but because Flint does a lot of bad things, I guess you could say, if you're a coward. In this season or whatever, and basically him lying to the crew, like viewing the crew as disposable, which I think he fundamentally kind of does think. I think there is a bit of Askeladd hatred for pirates generally with Flint. But in my head, it's just like everything's justified. Like, lie to the people, sacrifice these 6 blokes to take down England. It's like, yes, for the bigger.
No, I agree.
It's like the ultimate, like, the Griffith, but not colored evil. Like, this is entirely worth it for the greater good.
Yeah, because, I mean, to me, it's just, I feel his anger, where it's completely, like, he was rejected just for who he is. Like, he's done nothing wrong. And he's just being forced into this world, and I completely understand. If he wanted to burn the world down, I understand it. And I don't blame him. So, and to me, he
kind of wants to burn the world down, but it's not just like the Joker burn it down. It's like,
no, of course. We're going to create what I mean is any bad stuff he does for the end, for like his end, like what he wants to achieve, I can understand it and I can feel it, which is not always something. Sometimes I can, like, logically understand why a character's doing something, but when Flint does it, I can feel why he's doing it, and I like that a lot about this show.
it's so visceral a lot of time, but the whole like most of the time when Flint is like at odds with like a character that we also like Silver at the end or Gates in this season
Mm,
or Billy or anybody, it's usually because they like care about the people around them, and Flint views them as disposable for this this eventual cause. Like I think it is in season 3 when they are stranded and they're all starving, and somebody like maybe steals something or basically questions Flint's authority, and he just like shoots them in front of everybody and says like any more thingies, and Silver is like freaking the fuck out because at this point he like loves the crew. Um
mm,
and yeah, that's like a big, and then they make up because they kill some sharks together and it's really cool.
yep.
Um but yeah, a lot of the time, and Silver at the end again is also like that, because even his girlfriend, whose name is Matty, I think, she's like totally down with Flint and like is with him, and she also wants to create like she wants to bring down this terrible system and everything, and he like kind of loses her in the end because he also like wants to protect her. It's kind of like Scott and Eleanor here, because Eleanor does end up dying, kind of in search of this new order. Um, but yeah, it there was I was going to go somewhere. That was the last point there, but I think I've forgotten
Mm,
it. But yes, that conflict of I guess it really is the Gates and Billy thing of like Billy was not disposable to me. The way he says "to me" in that
yeah.
scene, oh, it's so great. Old
Hmm.
Gates. People don't talk about Gates enough. What a character.
I
Um,
know. I mean, he dies so early in this whole story, which
yeah.
probably is what makes him so great in the end. But
Yes,
what a
Flint
yeah, another
motivation. We were
charismatic
talking
guy.
about that.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Um. Okay. I guess my most related note to what we were just talking about is that I don't remember what happens. Like, I know Billy comes back, but just to clear things up for me, did Flint push Billy, or did he just was
They
it
never
purely an accident?
say. Because
Okay.
Billy gets picked up by the Scarborough, I think, which is the ship that was chasing them then, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like on the beach. And this is like revealed in like I think like episode 4 of the next season. So we go a bunch of time without
Yep.
him there. And he's like in like this vest thing because it's leather and it's he's on the beach. So every time the tide comes in, it gets tighter. It's like squishing him. Terrible
Mm.
torture. But then he's like sent back to like undermine Flint. But he gets out of
Yep.
that eventually, and I think they end up. Oh no, because they want Flint or something, and they end up giving Eleanor over instead, and the Scarborough fucks off with Eleanor, and then that's how you set up the Eleanor season 3 plot. But Billy comes back and he's like on the beach, and everybody's like excited, and Silver and Flint is doing something else, so you don't get like they save it. What's Flint and Billy, and Billy
Mm.
isn't direct about what's happening, and he talks to Silver. Um, and then Flint comes on, and Flint's like, "Well, Billy, what's the go? How are we?" And I feel like they say like, "I'm not sure if I fell or if you pushed me," and Flint
Oh,
neither
that's right.
confirms nor deny, and it's kind of left ambiguous. But there is still resentment forever
Yep.
from Billy to Flint. But I think that might be just from general other things he does to get people killed, or it might even be for Gates. I don't remember.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, because it's on the beach. I think it might still be when Vane has the fort, and they're trying to
Mm.
get back up there. Um, because then that's like the episode Silver is like hatching a plan because he didn't tell everybody that like the gold is somewhere else or something, and um,
Mm.
it's a hell of a scheme. But I think we should keep going with your notes then.
Okay.
But yes,
Um.
Billy.
Yep. So the next thing, this is just a very specific kind of thing, but they have like that episode where they're docking the ship basically, like they're pulling it with the rope in the water to like dock
Yeah,
it on the sand, and then they're tying it to the
leaning
trees.
it. They have a
Um.
specific name for it. I forget what it is, but
Oh, I'm
yes.
sure they do. Yeah. But I just thought that was just so terrifying. Like
Yeah.
I can't imagine like even just when they're pulling the boat in the water. I'm like, man, if that just like goes a little bit faster and hits you, you're all dead. Um, I don't know. I just
Yeah.
thought that was such an ambitious thing to like show in a show, you know. So impressive.
There's a lot of
Uh,
ambiguity there because that's how Morley dies, and Flint's like the last one there. So Flint could have like kicked him and
yeah,
killed him. So there's a lot of
yeah,
like, did Flint kill? Is Flint killing everybody that potentially is undermining him? Because he does kill
yeah.
Gates in that fashion, and we see that very blatantly, and Singleton. Um, but yeah, this Flint fella.
Yep. Um, next up.
Careening is the name.
Wow, you got it.
I think they say that
You're
kind of.
basically a sailor.
But it is an interesting thing where Flint, like, because it kind of could be the ambiguity there in his actions to like go back and try and help Randall. Um, because he really didn't have to
Mm.
do that, and that's not going to help England very much, saving fucking Randall. Well, not help
Yeah.
England, but help kill England. But he does it anyway. So there is like this. Does he hate his crew? Does he actually like his crew? Does he just see them as a bunch of morons? Does he actually care if they die? And then there could have also
Mm.
been is he just doing it to show the crew that he cares when he actually doesn't, just to like
Yeah.
posture? Big risks to take. But he takes some risks, this fella. So yeah, this Flint fella.
Yep.
What is he doing? Ambiguity in action.
Yep. I've seen that video. Good video.
Mhm.
Next up of my random miscellaneous Flint related point, the fight with the slave ship, like the ship with the guns that they want to get. I remember that like briefly from my first watch through, but I loved it in this watch through.
Two
Where you get,
episodes, so cool.
it's just you're following. I like initially when it starts and you're following Dufresne's perspective, which is an interesting thing. Like they didn't have to do
Yeah.
it like that. But I just felt I felt his anxiety where it's like, oh, everyone's running and now you have to run, and you're in the middle of all this chaos, and it's just directed so well. Like the directing in the show overall is just so fantastic.
Yes.
And yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say for that scene.
Yeah, I like. Maybe this might come up later, but like all the planning stuff is really cool. Them coming up with a bunch of different plans. Gates name dropping Henry Avery and saying that he must have been on Henry Avery's crew at some time, saying that he saw Avery try and do this thing once, but it wasn't successful. Henry Avery is not the main antagonist, but he's like a big figure in Uncharted 4. That you go to like his pirate oasis. He's a real life pirate thing. He's also mentioned at the end of season 4 as like this. Like there's an old dude that Rackham takes on that's going to take him to the secret island, which is basically the setting for the last few episodes. And he's like, oh, he's the only man still alive to have ever served on like Avery's crew or something. And he's like super old and he dies on the deck. And it's a cute moment. That's a cute little thing in season 4. He has like a monologue before he dies and everything. It's really cool. But yes, Henry Avery is maybe the world's most famous, maybe behind Blackbeard pirate.
Wow, I've never heard of him.
Henry Avery. He's in it.
What a
They say
bloke.
his name in Uncharted 4 a million times. So I was like, I know that fella. I know a thing or two about pirates. I don't think there's a Henry Avery in One Piece yet. He might be saving that. Because in One Piece they basically hit all the big pirate. Like there's always like there hasn't been a pirate in One Piece with a peg leg yet, so that's like a big thing. Wait, yeah, there is. There's the chef dude. There's something like, oh, it might be a parrot or an eye patch or something. Like somehow this has never been in One Piece. It's like, oh, when the character shows up with the eye patch and the pirate, it's gonna be a big fucking meme. Zoro has an eye patch. It must be the parrot. There's one pirate element that hasn't been there that everybody talks about all the time. But there is a Blackbeard in One Piece, and his name is Edward Teach. So when he showed up in Black Sails, I was like, no, they name drop him as Teach, and I was like, oh my god, it's the Blackbeard guy.
Wow.
Because it's like a little tease at the beginning of season 3. But yes, pirate lore, I know it all. I played Uncharted 4. I've read a little bit of One Piece and know all the spoilers, and I've watched Black Sails. I know everything about pirates.
I think I've seen Pirates of the Caribbean and I've seen Black Sails, and that's it.
I haven't seen Pirates of the Caribbean, all right?
Really? Jesus.
Yeah.
It's nothing like this, I can tell you that.
Yeah. A bit different in tone.
Yeah, because I initially, when I first watched the show, I watched this entire show, like I binged it. I'd like watch it between breaks at work or whatever. But then I got to the end and I'm like, I want more pirate stuff. And I watched the first like half hour of Pirates of the Caribbean. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I just don't enjoy it. I mean, it's good because it's a good movie, but it's not any way related to what I enjoyed about Black Sails. Anyway, the more on this storyline, the final point I have for the Walrus, like a lot happens and I'm sure I missed a lot, but the last point I have is just about that, the Flint and Gates nodding at each other scene. So we'll talk about that. For me, I think it's just pretty straightforward as to why it works so well for me, is that, I don't know, you see Flint and he nods, and then you get the reveal and you get some insights and then you see Gates nod and then the music swells like you talked about.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just so effective. I don't know. I'm like, man, this is so cool, These two men, like, they're looking at each other. They both probably don't really trust each other. And they're pretending and they're putting up appearances for the sake of, like, their mission. And they're nodding. It's cute.
There's something about the sound design specifically in that scene that's perfect for recontextualization, flashbacks, cut back to the action. I've seen it someplace else. I can't place it at all. But just the way the sound design and the music is, like, underneath. Because you start off with the big dramatic music because they're taking off, and then it like goes into the background as you cut back to the to them in the bar, and it's like swelling underneath the whole time, and then it comes back right at the end of that scene into the next one, and then not again. Something
Yeah.
about that structure of sound design works very well for the recontextualization reveal thingy. I feel like it might be a Last of Us 2 thing at the very end of that game. When you're cutting back to the, well, I'd like to try thing, and then you cut back to Ellie on the beach. That's vague enough, I guess, to not
Yep.
directly spoil anybody. It has to be in a bunch of other things too, because I remember recognizing it in that when I saw that for the first time. But it's a common technique, I guess. But there's something about it that just works so perfectly. I think if I watch the scene again, I'll probably like it again more. It's just I don't know what I had in my mind, that it was like a longer
Yeah.
or more dramatic or something. I know I just not infantilized it, but romanticized it in my head so much that nothing could live up to it. And that's happened to me a lot in the past for certain things. I remember the specific Boardwalk Empire example of me thinking the line was, "Why don't you sweep the fucking sand?" But he just says like, "Why don't you sweep the sand?" like that. And it's still like the same effect, but I'm just like, man, I've said in my head like a million times, "Why don't you
Yeah.
sweep the fucking sand?" And it's like, oh, it's like the greatest build up of the whole thing. It's at the very end of the show. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. But just like the line being slightly different is like, oh, well, I guess I have to readjust what it is in my brain.
Yeah, well,
That's why
art
the
is
third
subjective, right?
rewatches are always the best. We'll be back in
Oh
a
my
year to
goodness.
do it again.
Yeah, hell yeah. All right.
But yes, the Walrus stuff is fun
That's the
time.
Walrus. Yep. Next up, unless you have anything else on this whole Walrus, Gates, Flint, Billy,
Do
etc.
we have a section on Gates later? Or
I
is
just have
this,
like a minor characters thing, but not really. I mean, he's not
is
really a
there more to
minor
say
character.
about Gates? He's just like he it's funny because I've actually been thinking about this a lot recently. Nobody cares how moral a character is or whether or not they do the good or bad thing. It's all about how they're portrayed. It's all about tone. I've been thinking about this in
Yeah.
relation to the greatest television program of all time, House of the Dragon. Episode 1 just came out. But characters will do bad things. I'm not talking about House of the Dragon anymore. Gates will do bad things. He will lie to the crew for the sake of Flint. And later on, he actually says, like, oh, I actually do think it's in the crew's best interest. I don't know if I believe him all the time. I think Flint's like his friend, and he does things for him sometimes. But he'll like go behind people's back, and Morley like thinks he's corrupt, and Singleton thinks he's corrupt because he's bought by the captain, and the quartermaster is supposed to oppose the captain in ways Dufresne actually does end up doing. Come the end of the season. Because they're supposed to hold like equal power, and except when they're in battle, and make decisions, and because pirate ships are like democracies and things like that. But like he'll completely do that, but he'll always it'll always be like in a funny way or something, or he'll like there's the one time where the one because there are a bunch of reoccurring secondary characters, and I remember how most of them die. And I remember them all having cool death scenes, which is cool to have like the background characters. I hear like Star Trek people talk about this all the time, where there's like a bunch of background characters in the crew or something, and they never really get too much characterization. But the one dude who's in love with Charlotte the prostitute in a later season, he's always like looking. He pipes up in when they're fighting the ship that took off with their cannons, one of Guthrie's ships. And he's like, no, it's fucking suicide. I don't want to do it. And then Gates just like punches him and then kicks him and then says like, does anybody else have like any questions or whatever? It's just like, well, you're kind of making this dude die, and he kind of is making a good point, and that plan is stupid, and they never end up actually doing it because they realize the slaves are there. But it's like, I don't know, that's like a fucked up thing to do, but you're completely on Gates' side because it's like funny and the way he says it is good. And he's like, I don't know, there's also, it's not always that it has to be undercut with a joke to make the character still seem likable, even though they just did a bad thing if you think about it for too long. It's, fuck, I forgot my point. God damn it. It's about like if he does it in a way that's likable, I guess, in an abrasive way. Like Flint does a bunch of this stuff, but in his abrasive like kill England mode, and you're like, okay, yes, I'm completely down with it. This is likable. I believe in this. I was actually also thinking about this in relation to things generally, and about whether or not things make like logical sense or whatever, or coincidences or things like that, and how like there's nothing like good or bad about these things. Stories don't have to be logical, but if like it's done in a likable way, like it'll completely be forgiven and completely be forgotten. And but this is a larger point. But generally, Gates is a lot of that character where it's just like he's just so funny and likable, and it's like he could do no wrong no matter what. And because the show always portrays his actions as likable in the way it's directed and the way he's acting in the way in every way basically. It's always like I don't think there's a moment where you're like, man, fuck Gates. I don't think that ever happens.
Yeah.
It depends how much of a Flint simp you are in that final scene. Whether you're like Gates, listen to Flint, you fucker.
Yeah.
But it is a
Well,
great moment where
yeah, go ahead.
he's like immediately sorry. It's just like, oh, so good. But yeah.
Yeah. But more on that like gate scene with Flint at the end. He says that he's going to let him go, which I didn't remember that at all. How he's like, yeah, we'll take you back and then we'll smuggle you away before the crew can execute you. What a good bloke this Gates guy is. But
and then Flint kills
and then he kills him. Terrible. But more on Gates. I have two other points on Gates, which is the first one is that this is just like a personal experience when I watched it. You see him in episode 1, like from the perspective of the English ship, or Spanish, I think it was English. And he almost kills the captain, and then Flint stops him. And I just thought that was really interesting.
I thought that was Singleton.
Was it? No. Was it? Now I'm not sure, but I when I wrote it down, yeah, double check. I'm pretty sure it was Gates, but maybe not, because they look pretty similar now that I think.
I'm almost certain it teases the Singleton.
That, you know what? That would make so much more sense.
Hold on. I fucking started the episode. It was blasting my goddamn ears. Hold on. It's 5 minutes in. Goddamn, this opening scene.
It's right before Flint stops him.
I don't think you see Gates, because Singleton is here in the thingy. He's near the captain. He did just dodge the captain's shot. He's charging the captain now. He's got his sword out.
Don't tell me.
Flint stops him.
Unbelievable.
That would be 1 for Kyle Entertainment, 0 for Elite RE.
All right, maybe you're right about the Storm episode. All right, fair enough. All right, Singleton. You know what? You know what? Gates isn't as good as I thought he is. No, what a boring character. Anyway, so the only other note I've got for Gates is the part I probably found the most interesting about him, which is that he's a bit unsure of himself. Like when he's asked to be the captain of the secondary ship, and
Jack gets to him.
Jack gets to him and is like, you're too old and you're too inexperienced, and one day the crew's going to see you accidentally stumble or something, and then they're going to be like, oh, I wish we had a captain 30 years younger.
They're not going to say it out loud because they love him. It's such a great little
yeah. And it's just this. It reframes Gates as just an old man who we love, and it's like, oh, this poor man, he doesn't believe in himself.
He's not exactly a physical specimen like Vane or something. He's kind of short. He's kind of fat. He's kind of old,
and he lacks self-confidence. He doesn't believe in himself.
It's funny because Jack probably doesn't believe that. He's just trying to get in to save his own ass.
But it works.
Yes.
And that's another reason why I like Gates so much, because it's just an old man who isn't sure of himself. What a bloke. That's all I got for Gates. Anything else you want to talk about with the Walrus?
Oh, that was a great leading off point into a whole different monologue I have, but I don't know if this is the time.
Well, next up is the Barlow Woman stuff with Flint.
I think I should do it now. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's 2 different points here. There's nuanced character writing, and there's how this show is written, and how the plot might be too complex at times.
Okay.
Because part of this goes into the All right, we'll do the plot thingy quickly. I'll try and do it quickly. There's a bunch of times, and I've seen this show before, so I know how everything roughly plays out. But there were times where I was like, why is Scott doing this? And it makes sense. And I would pause it and think about it for a second. And I'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Why Scott would do this, because this thing and this relates to this. And I feel like sometimes it's too complex. And I actually think it might get worse in later seasons. I feel like the first time through, if you don't understand something, you just power through it because it's like, oh, it'll be explained, or the tone of the scene, even if you completely aren't keeping up with the little details of the schemes and stuff, just like the tone of the scene and the confrontation in the scene will sort of explain it for you. So when you're going through the first time, there were a bunch of times in all these episodes where I'd pause it and be like, so Eleanor wants to do this because Thingy did this and this relates to this, and it was like it's clear that this show is incredibly thought through. It's almost like the hyperlogical YouTube essayist critique dude's favorite show of all time, because everything has been thought through. Every character motivation for doing everything has been thought through. Scott and Eleanor do not want the same things, even if they love each other. Like, Scott will betray Eleanor to save Eleanor, and he can be appealed to by Richard Guthrie to save Eleanor, and it's like, why would he do this? Oh, it makes sense. And why is he like this? And then why would Guthrie in return do this to him? And how would that affect Eleanor? And then that affects the Flint thing. And it's just like there's schemes upon schemes upon schemes of motivation. And they do very well almost all the time. It's just sometimes I was like, this is a little too much, I think, of like living up to the false promise of Game of Thrones, where Game of Thrones would report all these schemes. So it would always just be like little finger turns on this bloke. And there was like some foreshadowing. But goddamn in this show, and I think this might be a season 2 thing, and then later seasons they might get away from this a little bit. But just like hyper thinking of like everybody's motivation, and characters constantly have things going on where they're learning new things, and like how this all unfolds into affecting every other plot. It is like incredibly well designed and well thought out and complex. Sometimes I think it might be a little bit too complex. Did you ever have any feeling like this when watching it?
My first impression of that is to say no, not at all.
Ooh.
The only time, like I guess, firstly, there's the difference in that. I agree with what you said when it's your first time and you're just blasting through it and you're like, yeah, it'll all get explained. Like I definitely experienced that on my first watch. This time, I guess I was stopping constantly, but not like because I couldn't, like I wanted to think about it, but purely because I just wanted to write notes. So maybe me just writing notes kind of helped with it.
Yeah, I don't take notes while I watch things anymore, so.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest difference. But the third thing is that there was one point where I had to pause and actually think about it deeply because I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here, which is, I don't know, either the last episode or the second last episode where essentially Flint takes control of the crew again, where he says that they're a tobacco ship, and then when he's not meant to say it's a tobacco ship, I was trying to figure out what's he saying, and then Dufresne's saying like, oh, he wins this and this and this, and Flint's like a master chess thing. I'm like, what? But I mean that confused me, but I got it in the end.
I thought about one of the chief moments of this was when the dude that they end up chasing in episodes 5 and 6, when he shows up, I think it is in episode 4, and he's like and because Richard's there, Scott's in the room, Eleanor's in the room, and he's in the room. And it's like impossible to figure out like who's with who, like, and
who
who's
what. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, who is this dude? So this dude works for Richard's family's company, but he mostly operates in the colonies in like Boston. And he's coming here, and what does he think of Eleanor? And he like brushes her off, and then he, I guess, is at the whim of Richard Guthrie. He has to actually do what he says. And then there's also the through line of Richard Guthrie could give up the whole thing and say that he's been shot and that he's been arrested and that the thingy. And Scott's also in the room, and right before that, Scott and Richard have a conversation about something, and then Eleanor is like doing the thing, and then they ask him to leave, and then it seems like he agrees to the plan, but he doesn't actually agree to the plan, and Scott's in on the betrayal, and somehow Richard, and what does Richard get out of this? And it's just like thinking through why characters would do this.
Yeah.
And it all comes like once you think about it and you figure it out, it's like, oh, that like it is very smart, but it's sort of like, I don't know if I can keep up with this in the scene, and I know how this ends up. I know like that this is going to end up in conflict with Flint.
Yeah.
And,
you know what? You saying that, I think you've triggered my memories of when I did watch the show and I thought that. But it was kind of related, where I think what would happen later on in the seasons is that there'd be a lot of complex relationships like you're describing, and then suddenly they would change. And then trying to keep track of those changes and how
it
like
does
if you're watching
move
the show
at
pretty
a
quickly,
million miles a second.
Yeah, like you'll have all these relationships, and then I don't know, in the next scene they change completely. Now you have to like recontextualize like what is everyone thinking now, and like I don't think at this point in the show it's happened to me yet, but I'm sure it will happen later when there's just bigger changes I think happening.
There are also lots of scenes of characters like explaining other characters' motivations real quick. It'll be like Silver saying, well, he did this because of this and this and this, and that means this, and that means you're in this situation, Mr. Person I'm talking to, but I'm actually not being truthful. I'm trying to manipulate you. And again, like 90% of the time, I think this is great, and it's like incredibly fascinating to watch, and it's obviously an incredible feat to have thought through this. Like, it would have been so easy to just have Scott be on Eleanor's side and like give reaction faces when he and Eleanor, who are the same character basically, get fucked over or something. But it's specifically not like that. And it's constantly thought, even with the crew, it's like, well, the crew isn't going to like this, so we have to do this. Like, Rackham will be like fucking over Vane in some way. He'll like pressure them into agreeing to the Urca thing by taking out the pesos or whatever, and then Rackham loses him, so now he's at odds with the crew, and Vane's in his face. But yeah, there's some complex things going on. Fuck,
Mm.
I had like a great example of this in that monologue, and I fucking forgot it. It
I
had
think
something
I
to
got
do
the
with
point.
Rackham, but yes. God, it was
All
going to lead
right.
to something else. God damn it, my brain.
Well, if you remember it, then just blurt it out.
Well, what's going to happen is you're going to start making another point, in 10 seconds into it, I'm going to go, ah!
All right, perfect. Well, all right, I thought of one extra point for the Walrus section, so I'll bring that up and we'll see how it goes. But about Dufresne, I just thought it was really interesting how he accuses Flint of just being bad or whatever, and is like, you know what, we're gonna have a trial for you. I mean, he does it at the worst possible moment for Flint, where it's like they've cornered this man of war, and they might win if they do something now, but he essentially just calls out Flint's leadership at the worst possible moment. But then he becomes like the de facto captain at that point, and he is forced to see what it's like to be Flint for a bit, where it's like he's in this unwinnable situation, and I guess if I was in this situation, I'd just be thinking how maybe Flint's position isn't as straightforward as I thought, like Flint's like perspective, because he's navigating these difficult situations that now Dufresne has been placed in. I don't know.
Yeah. This
It's
comes
just an
back in season
interesting.
2, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's really interesting. Maybe I'm blending a bit of that, but you know what, Dufresne, he's got a taste of Flint's life a bit there, which was really interesting.
You do remember he gets recast, right?
I do remember that. Yeah, I also when he shaved his hair here, I was like, oh, did he get recast here? But I'm assuming he wasn't.
No.
Okay.
The next Dufresne sucks, by the way. He's
Oh, really?
he kind of gets written out of the show, kind of.
I remember his
So he
death.
ends up with
That's one thing I
Hornigold,
remember.
yeah, and silver stumps on his head after he hasn't been in the show for like that whole season. He ends up with
Wow.
Hornigold, and he sells Eleanor out, and it's like, this actor isn't nearly as cool.
Damn.
Fuck this guy.
Yeah. Yep.
But I've forgotten another point. I was going to say something at the end
Oh,
of that,
excellent.
but I'm just forgetting things at a time. I have the sticky note thing to write down my points as I forget them, but I forgot to do that. So I'm forgetting and
shame.
forgotten. Wait, what were you said? Dufresne.
Dufresne is in Flint's position for a bit.
Yes, and he gets a taste of it.
Quickly,
a point. The point that I wanted to bring up, not the original really big point, but just this little point that I
say it before you forget it.
Was the shot where like the Man of War turns around and you realize that it has like 900,000 cannons
man,
on it, and
what a
it's
shot.
a great shot. And
It
it's like
is.
through the
It's
looking
man.
glass. It's like I remember Blind Wave went on about like when that shot happens, they all go up and they have the big, and then in the discussion about 15 times like, man, that shot was so cool. And
It is
they're
so
right.
cool.
It's so fucking sick. And it's like, oh man, this is
it's
like one ship in the Spanish army.
Yeah.
This is what Flint wants to fight constantly, and it's like, man.
And it's just such a not a subversion. I'm sure there's a word for it, but initially you only see like the actual flaps, and then they all open at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's just like that sudden like
reveal, maybe.
Yeah, reveal. Yeah, that's probably it. Awesome.
But yes, I think we might be done with the Walrus and the Flint section now. Maybe I can't think of anything else.
Oh boy. All right. So next up is the Barlow Woman stuff. I'm not sure. We might have covered some of this stuff already. I guess
how do you feel about Miranda at this point? Do you like her, or do you?
I don't. Okay, let's see. I understand her. I don't like her. Like I don't like right now. I wouldn't want to see another scene of her. I don't think. Where I'm like, I would love to see another Flint scene or another like Eleanor scene or something. But yeah, you thought of something.
I really no. I said oof because you're saying some blasphemous things. I think I don't know if she grew on me or if I've just always liked her, but I liked her a lot. I think the actress is very good. I think I thought I guess I noted that she was better last time. Now I think this is a scene that I've romanticized in my brain. But there's like a scene in season 3 where they're all starving on the boat, which we're bringing up all the time. Which is, I say that like first 3 episodes where they're not at Nassau and they're starving on the boat. I always say that that's like why season 3 is the worst season. But I'm bringing it up so much and how much I love it. So I'm fake news and a fake bloke. There's a scene where after she dies, and her death is great, and the last scene with her where she takes the Flint role and is like the crazy, unreasonable one that wants everybody to burn, and then she gets shot. So great. But there's like a scene, and I remember this is another scene I brought up to you when you were in chat one time, and you're like, I don't remember that scene at all. And I was like, oh, I nearly called you Miller because you said something stupid. Ari, you're stupid.
Yep.
But it's like this vision he has where they're like riding in a boat after she's dead, and he turns to her and he's like, man, Thomas like destroyed my life when he died. It was so sad. But your death, it ruined me or something. And it's like, oh, he like says like her death was worse than Thomas's, and it's like, oh, this great moment of after the fact of reiterating how much she means to her. I just think about that all the time, and I'm like, man, Miranda, the greatest character I ever saw in my life. And so I think I came into this with that vision, but I feel like she's at odds with Flint, which like makes you go, man, Miranda, why are you tampering? This all could have been avoided if you didn't write that goddamn letter. But I think I like her generally, and I can't wait. The season 2, she's in season 2 a lot more, I'm pretty sure, because the whole storyline with the daughter and of their old friend, and she goes with them obviously to get killed in Charleston or whatever it's called.
Oh my goodness, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't remember that at all. The whole season is about
Who's
the
kidnapped
daughter. The kidnapped daughter. That's the opening scene for season 2 by that crazy dude who Vane kills for Eleanor, even though he's not simping, but he's definitely simping. And because he kills her, Eleanor fucks him again because she's manipulating him, and then she is one of the characters from the flashbacks, and that's the dude who runs the place, and eventually it looks like they're going to strike a deal, but then Miranda pipes up and gets shot, and then Flint does the thing where he's like, and she's in the casket, and she's like, and he turns to him and he's like, her word will be the last word for this place, and then everything blows up, and it's the greatest fucking thing you've ever seen in your life. You don't remember any of this?
I none of that triggered anything in my mind. I don't remember it at all.
Season 2 is Vane then kidnaps the girl, and then Eleanor has to let her out, and that's you're gonna be in for a shock with
nothing. Yeah, nothing is the only thing I remember from season 2 is the reveal. No. That's amazing. All right.
The whole Charleston thing where they blow up the whole town.
I don't know how I don't remember it.
There's no shot in hell.
Oh, wait. The town, is that where Flint is taken?
Flint? Yeah, Flint's taken and Vane comes to save him.
And is like, we're going to save him or something. I'm like,
let's say we get him out of
there. Get him the hell out of there.
And then he does a big speech in front of all the disgusting civilization people. He's like, and he's in chains and he brings it down, and when he brings it down his hand,
okay, I remember that. Yeah, it's all coming back.
We need to start talking about season 1, all right? I don't know.
Okay,
Miranda's the greatest.
Interesting.
But yes, you got some notes on the Miranda Flint stuff.
Okay, my first note is about the first scene we get of her, where it's Flint coming back,
he wanders back
at night,
collapses.
and he just collapses, and it's so great. And it's just, to me, it's just like he's been putting up a front this whole time, and it's just really just tired deep down. He's back. Yeah, it's great.
This gets into the subversive thing a little bit more. Of it's like, oh, obviously Flint has a girlfriend or a wife that he loves very much, and that's why he does all the things, and like he's vulnerable with this girl. It's like plays into that, but then that's really not what their relationship is like at all. Yeah. And they're kind of adversarial, and even though because there's a maybe you have a note on this. There's a sex scene with them in the next episode that I actually remembered wrong. I remember like Flint seems completely not into it, and he's actually not into it because he's distracted and he's got a bunch of things on his mind. But I remembered thinking when the reveal comes, I was like, oh, he's like gay, so he's not into it. And I remember thinking about that. But then, like, in those same flashbacks, like, he sleeps with her there as well. So he's very clearly bi and very clearly into her. And it's just because he's, like, distracted. There's also a Rackham and Anne scene where he's also distracted and not performing during sexual intercourse. Shake my head. But a bit of a different context there. But that is also a similar thing, because Anne is kind of ends up like her and Jack end up like no longer sleeping together because she is just gay, I'm pretty sure. That's like a thing later on where they don't sleep together anymore, but they still love each other, and she's like only with Max. And they try a threesome thing for a little while, but it doesn't really work out. That's all Anne Max thing. We'll get into that. The greatest scene in the show that makes me cry every time at the very end when they're in the snow in Boston. And Max tells Anne that she's not going to do the deal thingy because she loves her too much. This show is the greatest. We'll get to all that stuff. Anyway, sure Barlow sex scene, subversion, because she's not just like the because it feels like, oh, it's going to be revealed that she's the motivation and she does everything. And they even play into that with like she's a witch and she's pulling his strings and what Morley and the other bloke think. Um, but yeah, it's like, oh, of course. And I always like that stuff where it's like, oh, the tough boy just loves a girl, and that's kind of what it is with Vane. But
Mm,
that's not really what it is with Flint. But yes, the
yeah,
collapsing scene, it's so great. It's like, oh, he gets to rest. Oh,
yep.
but it also plays into the monologue. Is that monologue in this season, or am I remembering this from later, where he's like, "Oh, you just walk with an oar until the dude mistakes it for a shovel, and that's when you know you've escaped the sea or something." Is that in this
Nope,
season?
I don't remember that.
I feel like it is. That's like the best monologue in the whole show. No, nowhere near, but it's really good. Is that? I swear that's in this season.
You know what? I'll trust your memory more than mine.
Like
I don't know.
Odysseus or something, and how this might be, he says this to Eleanor, I think, where he's like, oh, how to find peace is like you're a seaman, so you have an oar, and then you just keep walking inwards in land until like you are so far in that nobody there has ever seen the sea before, and they mistake your oar for a shovel, and that's where you start digging because
There's
the
no way. I don't remember
sea
this
will
then.
never find you. I feel like that's in the season, but I could be wrong. But
All
so
right,
good.
well,
But
we'll
that's like
see.
him walking inland, and like he's there, and like this is
Mm.
when the people don't necessarily recognize him, and he can just like collapse and look weak for a little bit. Um, but yes,
It all
uh,
ties together.
Barlow Woman notes.
Yes. So I don't know how much we can talk about it because we've already talked about it a bit, but
Yeah,
the gist of what's happening between her and Flint is that she is all about um, basically her passion for fighting England is gone. Like she just wants to live
yeah,
a normal life because the way they're living now is not living at all. Um, and then Flint, he can't accept it. He will keep fighting because he can't admit that he can't basically he can't admit he's wrong because he's not wrong. He won't
yeah.
accept a pardon from England. He will pardon England. So yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. We've talked about it a bit already. I don't really know what else to
Yeah.
say, but it's great.
It's interesting because she just like lives there. She doesn't really get to fight England, right? She's not out there
Yeah.
working towards it. She just like hears of him, and she's like alone all the time and bored, and she's fucking this boring pastor bloke just to do something. Um, yeah,
Mm.
she kind of does have a miserable life there.
Does does that pastor guy come back?
Yeah,
Because
I don't think very much. He speaks to
okay,
Vane right before Vane gets executed, if you remember that.
yeah, yeah,
And
I
when
do
he
remember
shows up,
that.
you're like, oh, that dude, he's back.
Because I had like bad when I saw him. I had like this gut feeling where I'm like, I don't like this guy. Something he does something
Yeah, he
bad or
looks
something.
weird.
But I guess that could be it. I don't know.
I think it's
Um,
just supposed to be like a repression and religion bad because repression, especially
yeah,
like the
yeah,
puritanical shit they're on during this time period.
terrible. Religion very bad.
Bacon's not here to
So
defend it, right? Let's shit on it.
yeah, there's no way
Um,
he's listening to this. Yeah, hell yeah. All right.
um,
Um, so I don't know why I've got this in this section, but I've got oh no, I guess I see why I put it here. I'm
oh,
talking about basically yeah,
just
yeah.
one, and because I kind of brought this up before, but it is like a really, because it is some more of this nuanced character writing point that I haven't really gotten into yet, but like the fact that she basically talks about how she's given up on the fight here, and you even said like she's lost a fight to fight England, but then in
Mm,
her last scene, she like regains all that like passion when she's like, "I want you to pay for for because you bought this place with our suffering or something," and she's like, it's not dead in her. She just isn't given the outlet like Flint is to go out and fight like British ships all the time. But when she's
mm.
reminded of it, it like all comes back, and she doesn't like, because she is the one that like kind of ruins the peace talks there, because of her like anger towards it all. But yeah,
Oh my goodness, it's all coming back to me, Kyle. I remember she was in a house with someone, and then um, oh, it's just coming back to me. All right. I vaguely remember season two now. Um, anyway, were you saying something something
no,
else?
that was the end of my
All
point.
right, all right. Okay, the final point I've got in this Barley Woman section is not about her at all. It's about after Gates dies, Flint kills him, and then Flint regrets it. And I raised this before, and I thought you said you didn't read it this way, which is that I see it as Flint, firstly regretting killing a friend, and secondly regretting or like feeling like he's becoming the man that England made him out to be. and
Mm.
it's sad for him because of that. And he's like, I am not that man. Why am I doing these things? But what do you think about that scene? He's
I
after
don't
he
think
kills
it's.
Gates.
I think he does feel bad about it. He definitely, obviously, he says I'm sorry like 15 times and is like
Yep.
weeping. And Silver runs in, and the moment where Silver runs in, the pistol, and they're together, and they're forced to uh, fight together, which will be carried over to the first bits of the second season. All great stuff. I don't think it's like, oh, anything to do with him reflecting on like England being right, because I think
Mm.
fundamentally the England thinks he's a monster because he's gay or bi at
Yep.
least. I don't think it has anything to do with his violence, because this is
Yep.
even brought up because he has scenes with like his naval captain in season 2 where the naval captain is like, you have this like deep darkness inside yourself, this like anger, and it's like not good for you, and I thought you had it under control or something. He talks about it, and like because you don't know the gay reveal yet, you're like, oh yeah, Flint kind of does have that. Like he is angry a lot of the times, and he has like this violent outburst when he kills Gates. But it's like, oh, and then you're supposed to realize, oh, that's because he's like has to repress these feelings or whatever, and everybody would look down on him because that captain is also there when like everybody finds out that he's bi or gay. And he's one of the people, because it's like Thomas's father, Alfred Hamilton, and like the captain and his like former naval captain or something, and they're all like disgusted with him, and like uh
Mm.
yeah, so it's like plays into that. But yeah, because I think it's just like him being confronted with like his two conflicting um motivations here. Like his natural, like he likes Gates, but like Gates is, it's like not just another crew member now. It's like Gates that he has to kill to continue this fight, and he chooses to do it instantly. Like I don't even know if he gets to think about it. He just instinctually does it, and he sort of has to live with it afterwards and realize like this is the decision he's made. This is who he
Mm.
is. This is what has to happen, and it's like, oh, this is an extra big hurt. But he's not over it very quickly, but he's like up and ready to continue the fight like right afterwards, after Silver talks to him for a bit. So I don't know. I guess it's not really contradictory, your viewing from my viewing. It's just I really didn't think about connecting it to England at
Yeah.
all.
I think maybe it's not like when you were saying that. I'm just trying to think. The way I phrased it before is that it's him thinking that he's becoming more like the monster that England sees him as. I think maybe it's more
If you
him,
just
like he
said
kills
him
Gates.
becoming a
Yeah.
monster, I think I'd be like,
I
yeah.
think that is what it is. Yeah. I think it's more the fact that it's another aspect of what England has done to him, where it's like
Mm,
he has been made into this person, and it's not like he didn't want this, but it's been
yeah.
forced onto him. I think it's something more along those lines.
It's more of the
Um,
like unjust world that we that he lives in, I guess, where he has to do this. He has to betray these people to try and fight for the greater good, I guess.
mm. All right, so that's everything that we've got about the Barlow Woman. Next up is Eleanor, and this is a long section. There's
Now,
a
before
lot
we
to
get
talk
into
about.
it, I want to
Yeah.
ask, because obviously Eleanor's my second. Well, I don't know, that Max girl. She's pretty cool.
Mm.
Um, Eleanor might be my second favorite character in the entire show. Where do you fall on the Eleanor question?
So there's two answers. The first is like the first time I watched it, and then there's now.
Well,
I
do
would say the
first time
first
first.
time,
Yeah.
yeah, first time I didn't. I would. She's just another character, like a
Uh,
minor character. I guess I don't know. I wouldn't really think much about her. I think
ugh.
she would annoy me when she got with
Ugh.
what's his name? The
Rogers.
villain Rogers. When she got with Rogers, I'm like, oh, this evil
The love
woman. How
story in
is she
season 3 is so
siding with this
cute.
man? But this time around, I love her. She's probably behind Flint as like my second favorite to watch. Like I just thought she had the most interesting stuff, judging by how many notes I've got here at least. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, this is a trend in the characters I like, and might even be a trend in real life. Very problematic. I like angry, confrontational, mean girls. Right, Ari? It's just always it.
Yep.
Ask is my favorite character, right? And now a lot
Yep.
of that is because I see myself in them. Um,
Right.
I'd also say I see myself in Flint a lot. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe I just like characters that are like me, Ari. I know I'm coming to a dastardly
I guess.
realization
I
right
guess that
now.
makes sense. Yeah.
I like Casca. She's not really anything like me, right?
You
Luffy,
hate
not really.
Griffith, right?
Anyway, yeah, fuck Griffith. But anyway,
There's nothing
I
like
love
you.
Eleanor. She's the greatest. She's always been the greatest. It's funny because even Blind Wave, the great Blind Wave, they don't even like it.
Mm-hmm.
They like had the same, I would say, the same position on Eleanor as you did the first time.
Mm.
The normies obviously didn't like her. They don't like nothing. Those are the only two reaction series I think I've seen of Black Sails. But even the
Yeah.
subreddit, which I dive into sometimes to my own peril. Now, subreddits for live action TV shows always like the nice girls. It's fucking pathetic. They're
Mm.
Reddit core. It's disgusting. In the Mad Men subreddit, they don't like any Mad Men girl that sleeps with more than two blokes. It's even the same on the
Mm.
Boardwalk Empire subreddit. Disgusting. They're all filthy, feral animals.
Mm-hmm.
Confrontational women make them queasy and scary, and that's why they don't like Eleanor. At least that's what I'm going with. But they don't like Eleanor or Max. Everybody makes fun of Max for a bad accent. And I guess it's just because I've
Really?
never met a French person in my life, and I assume since you're from Australia, you also have never met a French
Nope.
person in your life. So I'm like, accent sounds about
That's
right to me.
so
But
funny. I
everybody,
even had a note in the miscellaneous where I'm like, her accent is so good. But
that's what I think all the time too. I'm like, man, so
yeah,
good. But yeah, that's like the one. Those are like the two memes on the fucking dumb subreddit. But all live
yeah.
action TV show subreddits are terrible. And they don't like Eleanor, and it pisses me off all the time. Um, some of those Mad
You
Men
know,
examples are even worse. But
I went on I wait. You still were you in the middle of a point? What was that the
no, no,
point?
no. That's the end of my point. That she's mad, she's angry and mean, and I like that a lot.
Oh, right, right. Well, okay. On the subreddit thing, yesterday I was looking up something related to Black Sails on Reddit, and I came across the thread where it was like, oh, the week after the Flint reveal happened, and everyone was like hating it, and they're like, how can they put this gay agenda into Black Sails? And I'm there thinking, this is the best thing that's ever happened to the show. How can
Yeah,
you think this? Like, it's crazy. I
I
just
feel
had
like
no idea, but people hated it back when it aired, and this was like a thread after it had aired. It was crazy.
it was like it
Um,
must have been 2016. That's at the height of the internet anti-SJW memery, I think. So, but
crazy.
I feel like on the subreddit now, that's definitely like something everybody loves.
Yeah, it has to be. It's the
But
best
yeah,
part of the show.
it's so good. It's like the biggest recontextualization moment ever. Oh, besides the
Yeah.
last was part 2 one, but yeah, season 2.
Mm.
How exciting.
Yeah, very
Um,
exciting. But Eleanor,
Eleanor.
that's what we're up to. Um, so this is something you'll probably have a lot to say about, but her first scene. So I think I'll let you talk about it, and then I can talk about what my like
How much
interpretation
do I
was.
want to say? How much do I want to keep?
Yeah, that's
My
yeah, true. But also
well,
keep in
hopefully
mind
it'll,
this video will almost certainly be out after your Black Sails one. Like this, I
you
don't think
give
this is
me a
coming out till
lot of
next.
fucking credit here.
I think yeah, that is a good point. It is a long
um,
video.
The video is about. I spend like 5 minutes in this video introducing the concept of subversion to talk about this scene. I talk about the history of subversion on TV and in media leading up to when Black Sails is coming out. I talk about Attack on Titan. I talk about Game of Thrones. I talk about Marvel movies and how all these
Mm.
things are big and subversive. And how they sort of establish in their subversiveness a new era of tropes that are sort of need to be subverted. And I feel like Black Sails does a
Yeah.
very good job in subverting those subversions. So that whole beginning portion of the video is about subverting the subversion and introducing that as a point. This Eleanor scene is, I think, the biggest example in Black Sails of this subverting of the subversion thing, where it clearly sets up Eleanor to be this, I don't want to say generic, but this, I don't know, I don't even want to say Arya-esque, this modern representation of like a strong woman character in a show where she doesn't take no shit from anybody. She screams at the pirates and these big scary pirates. She'll belittle them because she's a girl and she runs shit. She's obviously also the boss here. She commands respect in all these sorts of ways. The scene is then subverted against that by this bloke calling her a cunt, which even like genders the insult.
Mm.
And then like upon finding out that he actually does earn money, or even maybe if he didn't, she might have still went the way she did. She instead makes a joke about how no, because he says "fuck yourself, cunt," and then she instead like says, "Well, maybe I will go fuck myself," basically, and like does a big laugh, and the whole bar goes up and laughing, and Gates smiles, and it's like, oh, Gates is smiling. That it's like
Mm.
a great scene of building up tension because you think she's just gonna like decapitate this bloke. She's gonna reveal that she's a
Yeah.
fucking ninja swordsman. She's gonna fly kick his head off. It's gonna hit the fucking wall. It's gonna be sick. But instead, it goes the other way, and it basically shows that she's funny. And
Mm.
basically my point at the end of that section of that video is that she is a pirate. She knows how this works. She fundamentally grew up here. There's even a line from Vane in the last episode where he's like Vane saw her for the first time when she was 13, which isn't weird because Vane was probably 13 too.
Mm.
And is like, oh, she just walked around like she owned the fucking place, and like she's basically been around pirates her entire life. And I think the first 2 seasons is about fundamentally like her and Flint being the final form of pirates, even though she never goes on a ship or anything, of this sort of like idea of freedom removed from like this evil civilization, this evil colonial forces in Spain and England at the time. And that kind of gets back into the original like Black Sails is the biggest SJW show of all time point. But yeah, so it kind of, that scene is like brilliant in like being like, oh, I don't know. I feel like this. I talked about this a little bit earlier too, where I was like, for me, watching Black Sails was like, oh, it's so fun to not like immediately figure out where everything's going. So I guess being predictable is bad is the point of this monologue.
Yeah.
And that Black Sails was never predictable, and you thought you knew what like exactly who Eleanor was immediately, and then it's like, oh no. Like she there's more to her than like the generic new trope of like strong female character. She has this like funniness and like slyness to her, and it's the line she says at the end of that scene to Gates is like, "The fuck do you want?" And I don't know,
Yeah.
it's so sly and so great, and like that's the Eleanor character right there. There's something about that. There's something like, I feel like I've said that before, that exact line in that exact fashion to somebody. It's like something, it feels like a very, I don't know, an Australian line, which we probably get from England. Also, it's funny that Silver has an Australian accent when that shouldn't exist yet. That's just like a funny little, like.
Is it an Australian accent? I feel like I've had
he's
this
an
conversation
Australian
with you
bloke.
before. Where I know the actor is Australian, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
He sounds
Yeah, I don't
exactly
know.
the same when he's not in character, because I've listened, because he talked to Blindwave, right? They were, or
Yeah,
something?
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But I've seen other
Huh.
interviews with him. I've seen some behind the scenes interviews and things like that. For the show,
Interesting.
but
No
yeah.
Australia. What a sad world.
Oh, Australia does exist, but the white Australian accent wouldn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Or really, none of these accents would exist because they're all speaking like like we kind of speak.
That's
with
true.
some words.
It's all
that are off,
fiction.
but yes. Fiction is fake. Embarrassing. Make it real. Just on the again for the last liney bit. That's why like I loved Eleanor immediately from that scene. That's like
Yep.
the whole point. That's the point of that video.
Wait, so the
how I
last
fell in
line
fell in love
with
Black-
Gates, or are you just talking
just
about
the whole
generally
thing,
though?
really.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, that's the title of that video. How I fell in love with Black Sails immediately, and it was like Flint. I immediately love him. Eleanor, I immediately love her. Let's go. I love these characters. Let's see where they go. Let's watch this whole fucking show.
Yeah,
and
go watch that
eventually
video, guys.
It's not out yet.
I'm sure it will be out. Don't you worry. Okay, so on this scene, mine is just like why I think I found this scene interesting, which is that it's very related to what you were saying. Maybe even the same point, just in another way of saying it. But to me, it just presents a very interesting power dynamic that she has, where she is initially like she is feared, and she innately has power. Where like that guy spoke up against her, and then everyone goes silent. Yeah. Like, oh, what's she gonna do? But at the same time, that innate power is through her own. Like she is born into it, which is what I'm saying in that innate power. But it is also her doing, where she uses that line at the end, where it's like, oh, you know what? I will go fuck myself. And it's just it's part what she was born into and part who she is. And I thought that was really interesting, and how she's able to maintain this power because of her charisma. Like it's just that like turning it into comedy and making it feel like not like it makes her feel like not someone who's in charge, but like what you were saying, like a pirate, like one of the boys, like someone who can joke around with them and who is an equal with them, but is still to command respect. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
A line I use in the video is that it shows that she's not insecure, that she doesn't have to like beat this guy up.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's a line I use in the video, but yeah.
So I can continue from that. I have like a related point to that, which is about her first scene with Vane.
And the punch that plays into this thingy as well,
which is really interesting. So to set the context, what you've got is that Vane gets Anne to kill one of Flint's men, which
Sure.
directly goes against what Eleanor. Oh yeah, kill Flint's
Swing the
men
vote.
basically. To swing the vote, which goes against what Eleanor wants. And Eleanor gets angry and then goes to Vane and then punches him in public. And
And everyone
then
goes,
Vane
"Oh!"
punches her back. Yeah, and Vane. Well, yeah.
The crowd
Vane
goes,
punches her
"Yeah!"
back. Yeah, and he. And then she gets knocked to the floor, and then he extends his hand, and then like is like, "Oh, let me pick you up." So to me, why I found I mean, firstly, it's just interesting because it's like, oh man, like what happened here? You know, this powerful lady getting hit by this powerful man, blah blah blah. But the interesting thing to me is that in that first scene, you see that she is to command respect through her like camaraderie, like through her ability to like, I don't know, through her words, feel like she's one of these men, right? But she's not really. Like she's getting her power because these men allow her to have power.
Yeah.
Like she's not a powerful person in it. She's a woman basically in this man's world. And here, like Vane demonstrates that, where he just punches her and gets knocked down. Gets her knocked down. And I thought that was just really interesting. Like it's a subversion of the subversion in a way, kind of. So what a scene.
The
Yeah.
Fuck, I did, but I think it just evaporated when you said subversion of the subversion, and I smirked.
Oh no.
God damn it! There was it was something about fucking fuck. Vane Eleanor relationship. I was thinking about how we're gonna get into that, and it's gonna be fun.
Vane punched her.
He did indeed.
She got up. Everyone's like, "Oh, is that triggering anything?"
Fuck it, it's gone. Keep going.
All right. Well, that's all I got for that point.
Yeah.
I guess yeah.
Are we going to talk about her and Vane now, or is that in the Vane section?
Well, so Eleanor is a very long section. So it's, I don't know. The next point, say it was to go into the next point, it's about the scene between Max and like trying to get the schedule from her. So that's the next thing I'd talk about. So do you think we should talk about Vane at this point?
Let's talk about the Max stuff. Yeah, go ahead. You go first.
So she's got the scene with Max where Max obviously knows Silver has the schedule, and now Eleanor comes and she's like, Max, you need to give me the schedule because Flint needs it. And Eleanor says that she'll protect Max from Vane, who would obviously hurt her if she gave the schedule up because Vane wants
this
that
is
schedule.
one thing. Okay. You just explained it right there. For a long time, I was like, why is Vane's crew mad at Max? Like, because in that scene, in the earlier scene where it's just him, their crew, and her, in the when they're trying to make the deal initially, like they quickly come to the conclusion that Max isn't just fucking them. But then her giving it to Flint, the location does fuck them. Okay. I was thinking about that the whole time because obviously that has pretty big ramifications, but you just explained it.
Perfect. You're welcome.
The Max. First of all, to finish off Eleanor's characterization in the pilot, there is the scene with Max where it's sort of like she is more vulnerable with her at the end, and it's very clear that they are together. Yeah, that is at the end of the first episode, and that's continued at the beginning of the second one. Second guessing myself, but yeah, it shows that like three different sides of Eleanor in just the first episode, a very multi-layered character. The Max situation with Eleanor at the beginning, I feel like it was a little early to try and have like a heartfelt. Maybe this is just normie poison because I remember watching the normies thingy. And like at that moment where Max kind of like falls to her knees and like begs Eleanor to leave with her, it's basically her proposing to her. She gets down on her knees and everything to leave, and they can take the money and be free of this place. But obviously Eleanor doesn't want to because she's built something here and she wants to try and change the world. And Max is just like, well, I like Eleanor and I like money and I don't like this place, so let's leave. Which won't be Max's position into the future. But it's like it kind of makes you feel like Max is like an idiot. And I don't know. It feels like way too early to have a big emotional moment like that between the two characters, especially since they like break up after that point, and they really don't have any like emotional scenes together until like the last episode where they basically have like you've done pretty well in this first season, and the other one's like, yeah, you did too, and They sort of go their separate ways. I don't know. It felt a little soon, and it feels like you don't really feel the emotion in that scene from Max's perspective because you're not too emotionally into Eleanor and Max's relationship. Because by then, it feels like the potential Flint relationship and the Vane relationship are already more interesting. And even Max, I think, is like more fun to watch with Silver at that point. But yeah, big Max simp, but the first season is not my favorite of hers. But
Yeah. I mean,
I
to
don't even
me,
know
I
if
would
you're
just
going into
say
that part. But yeah,
no, not really. But like, I think again, it comes down to the fact that it's a rewatch, and I know like if she did leave at that point, everyone probably would have been happier. I mean, not everyone, but I guess Eleanor and her probably would have been happier if they just left and lived a life separately.
well,
So I
Max
don't
does
know.
go through some shit, but she ends up in a Max ends up
I mean,
probably the most
she has
winning
to go through
character.
a lot of struggle to
She
to get to
definitely
that
in this
point.
in
I,
this season, yes.
um, I don't know. I kind of felt the emotion there in that first scene,
There's also
but
the thing of like the I'm gonna get raped repeatedly to try and hurt you thing that feels a little like in like no I don't know if I believe Max would make that decision or anybody would make that decision to like Eleanor basically comes to save her and just to like spite Eleanor because she rejected you basically. She ends up going to be in the tent when Eleanor was going to protect her. I don't know, it's like a little it feels a little forced, I guess. I don't know.
my goodness, I don't know. I buy it. It works for me. I mean, that's all I can really say. You either buy it or you don't, I
Yeah.
guess. It worked for me somehow. Um, but where was I up to? Oh, about this scene. So the gist of it is Eleanor is confronting Max, who has who knows where the page is. Flint wants it, and then Vane is going to punish her if she doesn't give it to him. What have I even got? I guess, yeah, I just want to describe, I guess, why I think it works again, which is that in this case, Eleanor is choosing power and respect that she has on Nassau over the love for Max, right? That's like the
Yeah,
whole
it's like
gist
the
of this
Flint
scene.
thing.
But the thing that's interesting here is, yeah, I guess it is like the Flint thing. Yeah, but the thing that's interesting, especially, is the fact that this is a perfectly fine decision that Eleanor can make. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with choosing to live here over Max.
Yeah.
But I think what makes this whole situation sour is that she completely like disrespects Max by not discussing it with her beforehand. Like she already has Flint outside the door in this scene, and she's already made the choice before she even talks to Max about it, which is just so like disrespectful, and that really is like what gets me fired up when I'm watching it. And
You are
I
right.
just to finish the point. I think it's very interesting because it's the same situation as what happens with her dad later on, where she has the men outside and is disrespecting Mr. Scott's like wishes by having the men outside and already like going to kill that guy out of the room. So I just thought it's really interesting about her. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
Eleanor, Eleanor really does disregard other people's feelings. That's why she's so perfect. She's so mean.
Yeah.
Like she does that with Vane. Like every time they ever interact, she's like she's like that. But yeah. I was gonna say like the imagery in that scene of like the rejected proposal, like asking someone to marry you, and then they're like, and like leaving you, like they step away and leave you like on your knees on the floor, and it's like, oh, this is kind of like an icky
Yeah.
situation. This feels really gross. But yeah, that definitely plays into it there, and all of that stuff works. I don't know. I'm not really at that point invested in Max and Eleanor running away together. So it's sort of like, yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of do want Eleanor to stay, and like I don't have anything against Max, but it's like, what were you doing? But that definitely plays into it a bunch. Eleanor like disregarding and sort of like using the people around her. Um, and it definitely comes off differently, even though that is kind of what Flint's doing. And it might just be a masculine feminine thing of like women who use the people around them are like disgusting, like gold digging whores or whatever. And the men that use the people around them are like the G's and the greatest and what a great ambitious man. It might just be that difference in the way it comes across. But yeah, there is something to. I remember thinking this repeatedly of like, Eleanor is really not taking like the feelings of anybody around her into account and is just kind of uh, objective driven, I guess. And she does it with Scott, she does it with Vane, she does it with Max. Um, I don't know if she does it into the future. I'll have to keep an eye out on that. But
Yeah.
yes, true and based.
Perfect. All right. The other note I've got on this scene is the fact that it's just even more like emotionally charged because of the fact that Max is in this scene still like recovering from her like wounds basically from what Vane did to her. Like Vane choked her, and like
Yeah.
the scene starts with her like healing from that, or like someone like tending to her. And it's just like it's just knowing like what happens, where it's later on. Like in this scene, Eleanor is rejecting Max, and later on she's gonna go and sleep with Vane, who's the man that choked her and did this to her,
Yeah.
while Max is being raped, and it's just such a terrible like, I don't know, it just makes the scene worse to me, where it's just
I
such a,
think that's I
it's
think
like the
that's
worst moment in Max's life.
yeah, I think that's like the next episode. Because
Yeah,
I think
it
because it's
is. Yeah.
after the meeting, because the meeting is what gets Eleanor to it's so like manipulative, and I don't even know if she realizes it, like what she does to Vane. I assume you have notes on that, so we won't talk about that until you get to it. But it's just like, goddamn. But yes, the and also the line in that scene where Max is like, she wants her to like say that like she'll watch as Flint beats her to like get the information out of her, and again, it's sort of like it's sort of like a characterization thing of like Flint is definitely going to do that if he needs to, but we never see Flint do it. So it's like, oh, we don't think Flint is like a woman beater, but we see Vane like manhandle her, and it's like it sort of colors our perception of Vane worse than Flint, even though they both would basically do the same thing. That was an old point about I talked about like the moral things and how it's all about positioning and things like that and how things are portrayed. But yeah, I do remember that Max line all the time. But indeed.
Right. So next up then, what is this? So I wrote, when she finds out that Max left her protection, she initially reacts with a feeling of inadequacy, then swaps to anger. So what is this? So okay. So yeah, when Eleanor finds out that Max left, she initially says, "Oh, I told her I'd protect her. Did she not believe me?" And then she says, "She chose this, not me." And it's like that. It's like a swift like turn, I guess, where initially she feels inadequate, and then she feels like angry towards the person that slighted her.
Yeah,
It's like a small character thing of her.
this is another Eleanor thing, yeah, where she like when people don't do what she wants, she also gets angry. It is sort of like another sort of manipulative quirk of hers.
Yeah.
But it's great. I love it.
And then another thing related is the fact that just I guess me like thinking about why is she so hell bent on finding this treasure, and like from a personal perspective. And one of the reasons is that so she can, I guess there's like a dichotomy here, which is either to rub it in Max's face, like out of this anger, which is like she chose this, not me. So I'm gonna find this treasure. I'm gonna prove her wrong, and look, I did it. But the other way is that she could be trying to prove to herself that she is in fact capable. Like if she does feel that like that Max left because she felt like Eleanor couldn't protect her from Vane. This is like Eleanor proving that she is really capable, and she will find this treasure, and she will live out her dreams and all that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Weird, small character thing.
It feels like she also wants to give Nassau legitimacy, and obviously the money would help, and it's sort of again her proving herself to her father and even the rest of her family. And yeah, it's sort of just like an ego ambition thing. Just quickly on the like her turning on Max at the end of that scene. I think she's not actually angry. I think she's just like trying to believe that, because later on with the scene with Silver, she like says that I keep saying to myself that she chose this, but she says like she finds those words lacking or something, and Silver tries to reiterate to her that she did choose this and everything. And obviously she does end up helping to save Max from the situation. So Anne has to coax her into it. But I feel like that's like a thing that people do a lot, where it's like immediately they'll be like somebody did something they didn't want. They get angry, but they're not actually angry. They're just like angry. It's like when there's like this stereotype of like a guy goes up to a girl that he likes and asks her out, and he gets like rejected, and then he says, "Well, you were ugly anyway, bitch," and then he like runs away. Where it's clearly like they don't mean that. It's just like a coping mechanism because they got rejected and they feel hurt in that moment. That's kind of what I think Eleanor is doing here.
Yeah, I like that. I think it works well.
But yeah.
All right. So now we have to make a decision of what to talk about, because My next point is about after the rape scene. So I skip over the rape scene because I put that in the max section. so
Yeah. I think
I guess yeah.
I think that works. We can talk about it with the Max scene. I want to talk about the Vane stuff though. So is that coming up or is that later? Because that ties into the Vane
You know
scene. That's
what?
after the
I don't
Vane
know if I
scene.
even cover the stuff you've got because
Now
mine is
let's
just
talk about
Vane. Yeah.
let's talk about this Vane stuff.
Okay.
It happens again in season 2 where it is like the Eleanor wants people to do what she wants them to do. Whenever Vane does something that Eleanor wants him to do, she sleeps with him and like rewards him. And I don't think it's like it is manipulative, but I think it's indirect. I don't think she realizes this. I think she just gets turned on when he does what she wants him to do. Like there is the smile when she's like it's just them alone because Jack goes to piss and Flint and Gates are arguing on the bridge about not being prepared for the meeting. And they just have like the cool, sexy moment together where they look at each other, and then obviously, and it's always like her charging into his tent and like just getting on top of him. It's always like very much like this is your reward here sort of thing. And Vane every time he gets like puppy dog eyes and he's so happy that Eleanor would fuck him. It's so great that like this is another thing that I wanted to make as an overall point is that like every character insofar as like every character's motivation for every situation is thought out extremely well and maybe even too well sometimes. Each character has a very like direct weakness that they can be manipulated through. Like with Flint, it would be like Barlow or his mission overall. Gates, it's like Billy. With Vane, it's very clearly like Eleanor has all this power over him and can make him almost do anything. And it's just so cute that like the big, well, I guess he's not too big, but the tough Vane, like the traditional, like this is going to be most of the bloke's favorite character. Like he is the Daemon Targaryen of this goddamn show. And for him to just be such a simp is like so endearing to me. And I like it so much, and it's very cute. And I don't know, because it happens in season 2 after I don't think it's after he kills the crazy dude that you don't remember that like is set up to clearly be the villain of season 2, but it's only in like 3 episodes because Vane just kills him immediately, and it's an I wish it happened moment, but it actually happened.
I remember him. Yeah, wait, he had a scar or an eye missing.
Yeah,
or something,
he's got a weird eye.
Yeah. That was I remember because you said it's one of those moments where it, like in that video you talked about, where it's like, oh, it's not gonna happen. It does happen. It does. Yeah, a great point. All right.
Yeah, but I think it's not that. I think it's like after that. And Vane also tries to make Eleanor jealous with other women, and it never works. Like he's like fucking a girl like in front of her in season 2 when he's in the fort, and it's something after that she comes back to him. And while she's sleeping with him, she sneaks out and kidnaps the daughter that you don't remember somehow. And they escape. It's just like this Charles Vane guy. What a cutie. He's just being controlled by Eleanor, and it's so great. I can feel like the Reddit coping at the fact like this Charles, he's so cool. Why does he let this woman do this to him? And it's like, man, hashtag
Is that what the
relatable.
normie said?
I don't know. I don't remember. They were probably like, man, Charles Vane's really hot, Lamau.
Yeah, that does sound like them.
But yes, that's really all I have for the Eleanor Vane stuff. And it just, and you talked about this earlier, the like fake monologue when he's high on the opiates after he gets thrown out of his crew or whatever, and it's just like Eleanor belittling him. And it's like so perfect. It's like you could take this whole island from me if you would. It's like it's clearly his internal monologue, but he's hearing it through Eleanor's ears. I don't know. I feel like I've had that moment before. From a mean girl. Okay. It's great. Relatable. Hashtag Charles Vane.
Okay, I want to talk about that scene then, because I really like your take on it.
He's like crying. It's so good.
Yeah, which is why I think but I've completely, all my notes on that scene are framed from a different perspective, which is about him being a former slave. Which is interesting.
That kind of plays into
Yeah, so I get what we're talking about a scene, I think it's like toward the end of this season where Vane is like high on drugs, and then he sees like this Eleanor really close up to his face. Like mid season. And she like gives this speech to him about like, oh, you're so strong, but look at you, and blah blah blah, and you could take this whole island, and it's that scene. That's the one we're talking about. Now, the first note I've got on this is like something we briefly talked about, which is just really interesting having this like manly man just crying, right? Like it's such like a subversive thing where you're meant to, like what we were saying, like people think he's like the coolest person, and here he is like being broken down in the scene. So I like that about it. The next thing is that Um, I guess just to describe a little bit here. So like he talks about how he loved. I mean, when I say he, it's like either him or the Eleanor. Essentially, they're the same person to me.
Yeah.
But he talks about how he loved her, Eleanor, because she was someone who would stand next to him, someone who was lesser but wouldn't settle for being lesser. So that's something he
Yeah.
says. Then he
But not
also,
lesser than him, lesser than like, oh, I think it is lesser than
I think
him,
it is
and
lesser than him.
and she's like, you knew I would never settle for that.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's what he likes about her. The fact that she is less,
yeah,
but she doesn't want to be, and she is struggling to be more than that. Now then he cries when she went because over like the thing that he's crying over is the fact that she hurt him, like she discarded him, right? Um,
yeah,
and it made everyone look down on him and made him feel powerless. Is the way I put it, which is rather than like his personal relationship with her. I think it's more. I mean, in my reading, it's more him feeling that someone he loves is looking down on him and makes him feel like that powerless, like child slave that he used to be.
yeah,
Which is really interesting to me. And another thing that ties into this is that like this whole scene ends with him essentially motivating himself to go back to his like childhood, like to go to that island and
yeah.
get that power back. And what have I even got here? So now he's gonna break free. Yeah, essentially he wants to get. Oh, this is a bit. I think I've messed up this point a bit. I'll read out the whole thing I've got, which is that he feels reinvigorated to continue the path he's been heading toward since he was a child. First, he broke free from his master, and now he's going to break free of anyone who would oppress him. He wants the kind of power that Eleanor has. So this like whole scene is essentially Eleanor in his mind telling him how he's not like he is still that boy, that powerless boy that he always was. He wants to get power from other people, like from Eleanor's he wants Eleanor's love, basically. And at the end here, I've like completely lost the point I was making. But I think the gist of it is the fact that he is now going out to get that power back that he never
Yeah.
got. He went from one master to another, and like from that big man to now Eleanor, and now he wants to get his own power finally.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I don't know.
there's also a scene here that ties into this that you didn't bring up, which is him after they're basically made owners of the brothel. He's with Adele, who becomes quite a character later. She's like
Yeah.
dating the bald dude that's also in Rackham's crew. She's also the prettiest girl in the show. That's a side point.
Mm.
But she's like supposed to like wash his wounds or whatever. It's a very sexually charged scene, though there's no sex there. She's like at his feet or whatever. But basically Vane goes on a monologue saying like she has all the power and nobody can do anything, and it's like him moping about how he can't do anything and how powerful she is, and he ends the scene saying like, oh, maybe it's about time I tried to do something about it instead of resigning myself to like her being powerful. And I think that is also tying into like the institutional thing or like the civilization around them. Like Vane like came to be a pirate, and being a pirate is supposed to be free, but really he is at the whim of Eleanor.
Yeah.
Because they even say that earlier, where it's like, oh, since like they broke up, their crew's kind of been getting fucked because they're not getting like the tips that Eleanor would give to like the other crews on where ships would be or whatever. And the crew was kind of mad at him for that. And then he has like this moment where he comes to her and is like so nice to her, and she like basically says "fuck you." This is in like episode 2 or 3. It's before the Max stuff, but it's like, I think Jack says that to him that like, oh, we've gotten less tips or whatever, and he basically goes to her and says that he wants to help her and like so they can be professional, whatever. And something, I think it might be that he killed the Flint dudes or something, and she's like, well, fuck you. And he's like so nice to her, and she like fakes being like touched by his speech and then says like, fuck you. And it's like, oh, he just looks like a pathetic like little the puppy dog eyes are back. But this also, because when he goes back to the island initially, he is like very trepidatious whenever he's around the big dude. He's like always staring at the kid who's got the brand on him. He's clearly scared when like for them to find out, like to find the scar on him or something, and find out that he used to be a slave here. And like that whole fight basically is him overcoming all those things. And basically realizing that to like, I guess to get Eleanor in the end, he has to be like equal to her. And that's like the fort is his way of doing that. and so like
Yep.
he can set demands and things like that. Because he's still like he tries to position it like he doesn't care about her anymore, but it's clear in the meeting they have that like he's still he's not going to do anything bad to her. And again, at the beginning of season 2, he like clearly kills this one dude for her because he threatens her one
Mm.
time, and it's a whole thing. And but yeah, I think that builds off on what you were trying to say about him
Yeah,
sort of
definitely.
reverting back into this like slave boy mentality, being sort of insecure, and um, he sort of has created this hyper macho like outward appearance to sort of
Yeah,
repress
he's always
those
whispering, you
feelings.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does have the deepest voice of deepest voices. So
What a cool
uh,
voice. I love his voice. Um, just
you
like I
know
love
he got
Max's
killed
accent.
off because he wanted to go and be on the 100 or something. That's why like he's killed off at the end of
No,
season 3.
really.
Yeah, apparently he wanted to be on that show more or something.
Oh,
That
what a
might just be a
loser.
Reddit meme, but yeah, it's like man.
Yeah. Have you seen him in anything else?
Um,
I've seen him in Agents of Shield.
I didn't know he was in Agents of Shield. I know he's in the 100, but that's it, I think.
Yep.
But yeah,
What a guy.
what a
Um,
fella. Oh, I just want to say that at the beginning, Vane has grown on me a lot because I think there's even a line in the video, where I'm like, because I'm like defending Eleanor, and I'm like, clearly some of you people chose Vane over Eleanor, and that's like pathetic or something. I say, um,
mm,
because I feel like a lot of the later Eleanor hate comes from like eventually it getting too much of her fucking over Vane, because they do have that one scene before he's executed where she comes to visit him when he's been captured and stuff. I think this is before the priest ends up visiting him. Um, but it's very interesting. It's sort of like their final thing because he's going to kill her father in the next season. And there's like a whole bunch of bad blood, and it's their final meeting. And
mm,
then Vane is like completely a good guy when he dies and basically martyrs himself um, to get the mission, the thingy over more with the public and things like that. Um, but yeah, and Eleanor is more like I don't know with Rogers at that point. So there's like a conflict or a flipping of positioning. But yeah,
mm.
people like Flint more. People like Vane more than Eleanor, and I won't stand for it. But I definitely came out of this liking Vane a lot more. Did I say Flint again? I meant Vane. Whenever I said Flint in that
Everyone
moment,
understands. I get it. Um, okay.
did we just
So
inadvertently
now
do all of Flint? All of
we did all,
fuck,
no.
all of
Yes,
Vane.
we did all of Vane. Yes.
Oh,
Which is
you'll do one of
perfect. You
those
know, we did in
things
one
in the
go.
timestamps where you do Sigurd, then Halfdan, then Sigurd
Oh,
continued. I know what you do.
absolutely. Um, okay. So,
Futurari, this is where you put the continued part. There
oh
we go.
boy, thank you. All right, you're saving me some time here in the editing. This is great. Now, all right. You know what? If we want to continue with Vane a little bit, let's go straight about
Oh, I
the
thought that was it. I thought you said like,
No,
oh,
it
that's all
is.
I had.
It is. That's the whole Vane thing. But the only thing related to him is the rape scene with Max.
Oh,
So I guess we
yes.
could just talk about that.
Transitions back in, yeah.
So what have I actually got
He
about
didn't want it to
this?
happen, which is something I actually didn't remember because
He
I remember
didn't.
holding
Yeah.
that against him the whole time. I was like, he did like get Max gang raped, and I was like, man, fuck Bane. But he's like, no, do it at
Yeah.
night, and it's sort of Rackham's incompetence that ends up that happening.
Yeah. I think, all right, first to talk about the scene, I just want to talk about how like visceral it is, I think.
Just
Like
the long shot at the beginning, and like you hear the screaming, and it's like,
yeah, like you approach it. Like it's not, you don't just cut to the scene. Oh geez, hit my mic. You like follow Eleanor as she goes to the scene. And it's like
yeah.
it's just like it's reveal, like a gross reveal kind of where it's just done very effectively.
Yes. It's the worst. It's why I
But
haven't rewatched the show until this moment because I was like, man, that's at the. I used to think that was at the like in the second episode. I think it's at the end of episode 3 actually.
yeah.
So I remember being like, man, do I really want to watch that scene and all the build up to that scene, and then that's like the composite rapes, the other rapes. I'm trying to say the rapes that happen afterwards, and like they're coming like rest like next 3 episodes. But yeah, it's a hell of an effective moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, other than that, I'm not really sure what else. Like the other note I've got is about how, I mean, there's two elements. One is the relationship between like Vane and Eleanor in this situation, right? Where this is the thing that will turn Eleanor against Vane completely. But at the same time, you've got the relationship with Max and Eleanor, right? Where now it's Max using her hatred for Eleanor, choosing to stay in this like terrible world that she's in, right?
Yeah.
This is stuff we talked about before, but like that's why to me why it's such an interesting scene. And I guess at the same time, it also seeds like Anne's empathy here. Like I think this is one of the first, maybe the first time where we see her. Like
it's actually interesting. I could have sworn that the Anne monologue about her like past was in this season, but it's not. It must be. It has to be in the next season. Do you remember the Anne backstory?
I very vaguely.
She was
I don't
like,
remember any details.
I think she was actually married to this dude who I don't even know if he was a pirate captain or just basically he would rape her all the time and she was like 11 or something.
Yeah.
And like he would have all like I guess he must have been a pirate and have the whole crew rape her all the time. And then Jack like killed them all and like saved her when he was like 13 too. And they've been together ever since or something.
Yeah.
And that's why she like loves Jack and everything. And she tells Max this at some point. It's clearly like that's why she's like not okay with all of this. Besides just being like a woman and probably empathizing a lot more. And there even is that like, because Anne seems like so threatening, especially at the beginning. And then there's like the point where Jack's like, well, you can't defend her or like you're going to be raped as well. And it's like, oh, it's like the thing we were talking about at the beginning about a perspective and then like, oh, the character not being as strong as you. Like, you would think like, oh, Anne can beat up like 9 guys. This is a TV show, and she's like super strong and stuff. But it's like, no, this is not what the show's going for. And it's like, ugh, gross. But yeah, but that's where because then the I guess we're talking about Anne now. The Anne jealousy thing towards Max comes in at the end, where she's like she accuses Jack of like sleeping with her at the end, and then she like has that scene where she walks past and sees. Max naked and she has like a pause. Now, originally I thought when I first watched the show that it was going to be a jealousy storyline that would develop, but instead it's like her basically falling in love with Max, which is built on in season 2. But yeah, who are we on? Vane? No, Max.
So no. That
Eleanor
we're
still.
talking about the rape scene, which is like a mix of Max and Eleanor, I guess, and Vane really, but.
Oh, because Anne in that scene goes to leave,
this?
if you remember. And then Vane's like, if you move, I'll kill you, to like her and Jack.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's clearly like, well, fuck this dude if he's going to let this happen, sort of thing. But yeah.
All right. So let's go back to Eleanor here, which is a point about how after the rape scene is when she starts feeling more tyrannical. Like this is like the action she does there to like casting out. I just said Flint, but I meant Vane. Vane's
I'm
men.
infecting your brain.
And that's what Hornigold calls her out for later. But I think like I just got a note on that. That's the point where she starts like disregarding what others are saying, and she's gonna do her own thing. But small point.
That's actually this is actually like a big Eleanor thing. Is that she does become more tyrannical, and then the dude outside is basically saying that she's going to become like a king, like she's going to become the structure that she's fighting against. And I never realized until this rewatch that like he's absolutely true. This is what Eleanor wants. She wants to be like the tyrannical ruler of this place, and it kind of like endears you more to Hornigold kind of because he's like. Because I don't know if we're going to get to this scene, but my favorite scene of all time when he says, I'm listening to him. And I used to think it was just like, oh, it's important. You should take note of what this person and the mob outside are saying. Like, there's a reason why they're all saying this. It didn't just sprout out of nowhere. It has to do with your actions. But it's actually him saying like, no, this consortium company we are making makes you like you have so much more power than all of us. It's like you
why
are
should we
basically
trust you
yourself.
to do this? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know if you could trust Eleanor. If I was in his position, if I would do that. With Hornigold, it does come out to bite him in the ass. So, but yeah, it's just Eleanor does kind of want to be this tyrannical ruler, and I never really thought of it that way. But, indeed.
So, can you believe it? My next point. Hornigold tells Eleanor that casting out Vane makes it so that no one trusts her. Interesting. I didn't even see that this was here when you started talking about it. I guess, yeah, do you have anything else more to say about the Hornigold scene?
It's interesting because it kind of makes you say like "fuck you, Hornigold," when it's like, yeah, like the max rape is good enough to like get these idiots banned from everything, even though it's really not Vane's fault per se.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of like because he even says like, "Oh, for what? For disciplining a whore or something?" It's like, and fuck you. So there is like seeds of like negative characterization for Hornigold here. Because obviously he will end up being more of an antagonistic character, especially in season 3. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about that.
So I have a note here more about the parallels between between Flint and Eleanor here, which is the idea that here Eleanor is seeing Hornigold in this situation as telling her to accept what Vane did, like to see that as acceptable. And it's very similar to like Flint's situation about England and how like accepting a pardon would be like seeing England as what they've done is acceptable. I don't know.
Admitting you were wrong when you're not wrong for like complacency for practicality, I guess.
For the greater good, I guess. I don't know. And I guess the interesting thing is that Eleanor does put her pride aside and she does do what's best for everyone, and she does like pardon Vane, whereas Flint won't. So it's just interesting.
I feel like she's more forced than Flint ever is. I guess except for maybe at the very, very end of the show where Silver basically says, "I'm going to kill you if you don't agree to do the thing."
Yeah, that's a good point.
But he's going to sit with him for minutes, for hours, for days. What a monologue that is. But
I can't wait till we get there. All right, Kyle. We've made it to the final point in the Eleanor section somehow.
Oh, I thought it was going to be way longer than this.
No. This is. I mean, there's a lot here.
That doesn't mean a single scene with her father yet. What are we doing?
Oh, I actually, you know what? I don't have any notes on her father, which is interesting.
I know.
But my
dynamic. I don't really have that much to say about it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it is, and he's gone to hiding now. What a coward. But I mean, it makes sense.
The Underhill estate. They fight there in season 4.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I think from a Blind Wave reaction, I think I remember that.
I like the actor from... Oh, I'm going to make a stupid side point real quick because I have to do it. I only started noticing this when I watched Mad Men, and I think this might just be all acting things ever. Why does everybody have blue or green eyes? It's just like the prettiest blue and green eyes everywhere. Huh. Silver has the bluest eyes you've ever seen in your life. Eleanor has like green eyes. Flint has green eyes. Not one brown-eyed cunt in the fucking thing. Everybody in Mad Men, all the girls have blue eyes. And I only started noticing it, and then I got into blue eyes a little bit. But
I could not name any eye colors for anyone.
I was completely with you. Like there were like girls in high school that I had crushes on, and then I went back and I'm like, holy shit, they've got blue eyes too. This was just something I never ever noticed in my life, was like eye color. And I think Mad Men did it to me, where it would be like just like they would just get the prettiest actress after the prettiest actress to be Don Draper's side piece for this 3-episode period. And it would just be like the bluest eyes you've ever seen. And I'm like, maybe in the 60s, everybody had blue eyes because it was like more white or whatever. And so I guess it would be consistent with this olden time shit over here. I think it might just be like like Hollywood and the acting industry have
like
pretty people.
A bias,
Yeah, and pretty people have pretty eyes. But you'll notice it now, forever and forever, just every time.
I'm sure I will.
And because it's the blues of like the sea and everything, and so they must have like the contrast up or something in how they film it. It's just every single prick.
That's a great point.
Eye.
Yeah. Wait. What about Gates?
I honestly don't remember Gates' eye color.
He might could have blue eyes, and I'd be like, yeah, he does. I don't know.
But he's not the prettiest fella. But Flint's got the greenest eyes you've ever seen, and it's like, man, I don't know if I've ever met anybody with green eyes. But then I'm like, I just didn't notice eye color when I was around a lot of people. Crazy stuff.
All right. Crazy. Eye colors, actors, everything. Hollywood, what a wild video this is.
What a wide tangent.
My final point on Eleanor, there's a lot on Eleanor, I'm sure we missed a lot, but it's her relationship with Mr. Scott, which I find pretty interesting, because obviously she loves him, you know, we get that pretty consistently throughout, but at the same time, she talks about how she's fed up by being, having to live her life because of other men, right? Like she says, my life is my own. It's not Benjamin Hornigold's. It's not Charles Vane's. It's not my father's, and it's not yours. But the thing I find most interesting here is the fact that like Eleanor is all about like having power and feeling powerful and feeling like in control and everything. But she doesn't acknowledge and like she isn't proud of owning a slave, which she does. Which is like the ultimate symbol of power, right? Having power over other people
I guess
is like owning another person. But
incidentally owns him. He's owned by the Guthrie estate or whatever.
no, but it's just interesting that she wants, like, at least maybe I'm reading her wrong, but it feels to me like she really wants to be in control of everything. But she won't tolerate slavery. Like she doesn't want slavery, which is like the ultimate form of like having control, which is just an interesting thing.
I think she wants control for like the right reasons. She wants like control to be part of her validation of like, obviously I'm the best, so you're all going to do what I say because what I say is the best.
Yeah.
And
well,
like,
all right, I guess
like
the other thing is like,
I mean, slavery
back then, was slavery illegal? No, would it be illegal?
Slavery
I don't know anything about
everywhere
history.
in this time.
But was it looked down upon as well, or like,
no?
Like, would she be seeing it as like a moral thing that she's not seeing?
I think she does.
Scott as a slave,
because she let like right after that she lets him go and join Hornigold's crew, so she's clearly not like enforcing him as a slave. But like slaves is like a key part of the entire world economy at this point, so it's not really looked down upon. It's like almost like an assumed good or something. Because this is in like the 1600s, right? And England is like one of the first. I actually don't know if they're one of the first countries, but they outlawed slavery at the beginning of the 1800s. It takes America like 50 years to catch up.
Right.
Queensland had slavery until Federation in 1901. So,
Jesus, I didn't know that.
Yep, they had indigenous slaves on the sugarcane farms, apparently. I remember that note from one history lesson.
Wow.
Yeah.
School was worth it.
These people, they'd be crazy with slavery and stuff.
Yep. But England ended it. Well done, England. Let's pat you on
I
the
guess
back.
in pirate society, it's kind of looked down upon. But they do say, like, Flint's crew is not going to just accept, like, all the slaves being free because selfishly they want to be paid for them. But Eleanor, like, arranges for some of them to work and some of them to be freed. But obviously they all have, like, black crew members and things because they're in, I think, where they are, like, the native people to that area would be black. And also there's slaves all in the colonies because they're right near the American colonies. So yeah, there'd be slaves all around. And like being a pirate is about being free of this society thing. So they'd be more, in pirate society, I guess they would be more accepting of slaves than general society. I guess that's like the big point about the fighting against civilization, this unjust civilization type thing, is that like there will be characters, and Rogers will be a character like this who will say like, we need to have like a civilized conversation. We need to bring civilization to Nassau or something, and they view it as this like ultimate like moral like correction, like this is the good thing to do, this is good for the people, but in reality it's like just awful. Like nowadays when you say that, it kind of is true, like society is better than like a wild criminal infested like underworld, but in this time it's really not true. Like the institution of slavery, like absolute sexism, absolute racism,
hating gay people,
absolute homophobia. Yeah, it's like, well, man, this isn't civilized at all. You people fucking suck. But yeah, so it is. And I think the point being made might be that society still is kind of like this. But that's kind of a thematic thing for way later on, I think.
Yep.
But
okay,
what are we talking about?
So that was the last point about Eleanor.
Eleanor and Mr. Scott. Yes.
Yeah,
he does leave. It is interesting.
Yep.
This will be developed.
Anything else for Eleanor, I guess?
She's the best.
All right. Best. Next up,
third best, maybe in a few seasons.
Yeah, we'll see.
There's no Eleanor scene.
Right, one a week. That's the way. So.
Do you even remember that Max scene, by the way? The Max Ann scene that I talk about all the time.
Which Max? Which one?
The one, the crybaby one. It's like the one in Boston. It's one of their last scenes. It's in like the second last episode where they basically tell each other that they love each other forever. And I don't even care about their relationship that much. It's just Max's acting in that scene is so good. Because I don't
No,
even
I
really
got no
like
idea.
Anne's.
No.
Anne's one of the characters that Anne's alright, but she's not like one of my favorites or anything. But
Yeah.
so good.
No, that's true. Well, guess what? We're going to talk about Max right now, and I don't know why.
More to
Were we
say?
just talking about Axe? So I don't even know.
Axe.
What did we say? Mag or whatever. Right? We're talking about the rape scene. What else have we got? She loves Eleanor, and she feels betrayed and angry when we've already talked about that.
Yeah.
She has that moment with Vane, which is cool. How she's like, "Oh, how did you feel when she
tossed
cast you
you
aside?"
aside. The acting's so good in
Yeah.
this scene. Fuck these idiots.
Yeah, it is. And
their,
then yeah,
the
those two
accent is
had
so
that was a
good.
great scene. Yeah. Like Vane and Max together is really interesting.
That's definitely in all the cool like Vane music video montage things. If you know what I'm like, they're not manga
Yeah,
music, they're
yeah,
not AMVs, but because they're live action. But it's like it'll be one of the opening lines
It's a cool
of the
edit.
dramatic music. Yeah, it'll be like,
Yeah.
how did you feel when she pushed you aside, and then it'll cut to Vane like struggling and being beaten up by the old dude, not the old dude, the big dude. Then it cuts to him getting hanged. And it's like, man, I love Charles
Crazy.
Vane, bro. But yeah,
what a sad life. So, I honestly don't have that much about Max. There are a bunch of small points. So, like, she tries to manipulate Vane's men into treating her gently, but it doesn't work.
It does
Don't really
work
have
for everybody,
anything-
but Hammond, whose name I am remembering now, who is
Wow,
the chief
yeah.
raper. But yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And now the last point for Max. I'm sure maybe you have other stuff to talk about, but it's her. We also briefly talked about this already, but her last scene between her and Eleanor, like right at the end of the season, where I think you said it was more like them saying, "Oh, look how far we've come this season." But it felt a bit like not like a threat, but more like a taunt, where Max is like talking about how, "Oh, you can, things can change so quickly," and she like says that to Eleanor at the end, which is like, "Oh, you never know what tomorrow will bring." And to me, it's kind of like, "Oh, does Max still hate Eleanor here?" And she's like, kind of saying, "Oh, maybe your downfall will come."
They don't.
And I don't know.
There's definitely some resentment there because they never like get back together. There's never even a tease of it really. They are forced to work together at the beginning of season 4, I think, when Rogers leaves. I think this is when he's chasing Blackbeard and all that happens, and like that other dude is left in charge. If you remember this other dude, he's like always screaming at Max and stuff, and it's like scary and they sort of have to manipulate him into thinking that he's making all these good decisions and
Oh yes,
but
he's another like he's Rogers' guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a fucking redcoat. These fucking Brits. But yeah, and that ties into the Anne scene because I don't know how much you remember of this Anne scene that I'm talking about, crying about all the time. In that, like a big thing in that thing is like Eleanor's dead. Max knows it, and she says like reflecting on Eleanor, like she seemed like she always maybe wanted to like get back with Max or something, but like she had ambitions that would like take her away from. I guess this is like the conflict of the entire series is like this is the Max the Flint and Eleanor thing we've been talking about whether or not choosing like the people you care about or like this ambition to create things. And Max basically says like Eleanor basically had an ambition that superseded her love for Max, even if sometimes she clearly like wanted the love back. And this is sort of the thing Flint goes through, and Max basically in that like she declines Eleanor's grandmother's offer to like become the statesman of Nassau by marrying this dude, and she would secretly run it from like behind the scenes and things like that. But she didn't want to because she didn't want to leave Anne or even have to pretend public facingly that she had left Anne because the line, and this is the tier line, is like there's nothing important in life that doesn't that doesn't include you. That's like the big dramatic climactic line in that. So it is interesting because the Flint decision at the end is kind of this, like finally choosing, and I think that might be the theme of the show to like, I don't know. This is kind of the theme of Berserk too, is like choosing the people you love over like your ambitions or something. Like Guts has this burning ambition for revenge against Griffith, but instead he has to choose Casca. And I remember because I put this in a video one time, and I think it might have been because you talk about this video all the time, the video of me watching my old videos. And I think because I was doing that on stream, and I remember when I got to that point, because I make that point, I think in the Casca undeniably best character moment. No, video, not moment. I make the point that like, oh, Berserk is actually about love conquers all or something, and it's like this very generic theme that the cool Berserk fans wouldn't think Berserk was actually about. But it kind of
Mm.
was. And I remember in chat, I remember Minty, not Minty, I remember Miller and Well Never Mind then making fun of me for making this point and being like, oh, what a cucked position that that like secretly everybody just wants to get married or something and have somebody they love more than they want to follow their dreams or something. Uh,
Mm.
and I do feel that to a certain extent of like, oh, so we really just have to settle for that instead of like changing the world. Um, so I wonder if that's just an inadvertent kind of thematic thing for the show, or
Mm.
that actually is the theme, because that really is everything. Because Silver even chooses that because he wants to protect his girlfriend rather than let her continue fighting Flint's war. But we'll keep an eye on this. Now, I'm sure this tied
Yeah.
in greatly to, because we were talking about Max and the last scene,
Yes. Yes.
and Eleanor never coming back, because Eleanor is like, I guess she might be principally the example thematically of taking ambitions too far because she ends up getting killed over it. But even in the end, she like dies because she goes back to save Scott's other daughter, uh, his biological
Yeah.
daughter, and get her out of the burning thing. So I guess in the end, maybe even she chooses that. Um, I don't know, thematic stuff we'll have to think about in the future. Um,
Yep.
Max good, Max good. Max better
Max.
in the future.
Max. What an accent! My goodness.
The greatest.
Anyway. Anyway.
Perfect.
So that's it. We've done. Who have we done? We've done Flint. We've done Eleanor. We've done
Oh
Max.
wait,
We've
do you
done
watch The
Vane.
Flash?
I've
'Cause
seen like
apparently,
two and a half seasons of The
well,
Flash, and
apparently
she is in The
Max,
Flash. Yeah.
yeah, is in The Flash. So maybe people watch The Flash and they're like, why is she speaking with an accent? Because if I saw her in something and she didn't have a French accent, I'd be like, what the fuck's going on
No,
here? So maybe
I think I saw her in The Flash initially.
apparently
I think that was
she's,
my
because I
first.
watched a little bit of The Flash too at the very beginning, maybe like season one, and
Yep.
because the Flash has the crush on the police sergeant's daughter, and
Iris.
I think
Yeah.
Iris, I remember the name, and
Good
apparently
girl.
Max is their future daughter grown up
Yes,
or
indeed,
something.
indeed.
All right, so you already knew that, all right, or
And
whatever. I was just
she's
trying to
really,
flex on
yeah.
nothing.
I've seen The Flash. I mean, I haven't seen all of it. 3 seasons or whatever. He got pretty bad in my opinion eventually, but here we are. Talking about a great show, Black Sails. What a show. Um, so Jack and Anne. I have 1 point on Jack because we've already talked a little bit about Anne. Um, so I was surprised that initially Jack has a lot more power over Vane than I remembered.
Oh, it's
Because
so
I think
good,
I was just
so
remembering. I
interesting.
think everything post him getting or Anne getting all Vane's men killed. I think their relationship kind of deteriorates after that. And that's what I remember about Jack. But at this point, he just has power over him, where whenever it feels like, oh, Vane's gonna get angry at Jack, Jack always has like a way to twist the words and
Yeah,
like talk about how, oh, you're the one who's doing this, and like what's the example? I have one example here about
he's like
in
Vane
episode
doesn't want
2.
to, yeah, Vane doesn't want to take out the money to pay for the schedule, but then because Jack is quartermaster, so he theoretically has as much power over the crew as um Vane, though they probably like him more because they
Yeah,
tend to like
yeah,
the quartermasters more. Um,
yep,
so he's
yeah, and he
basically already
talks about
told all the
like,
men about
yeah,
him, about the goal, and so they're all bought in, and Vane couldn't convince him out of it. Um,
yep, exactly.
But yeah, he's
What a
sly
dope.
because Jack ends up becoming like everybody's favorite character. Like he's like
Yeah,
probably
I
the
do
most
remember. Yeah,
morally good guy by the end. Like he doesn't do anything really fucked up. He's fighting the main bad guy in the last fight with Flint. It's like that's the god. The last episode is so good. There's like the scary moment where it's just because the whole like it's supposed to be Flint versus Rogers, but like the whole it's kind of been the whole time Jack versus Rogers. Um, and like
mm,
they have like that they're like fighting in the final episode, and you're like, and it's just Jack, and Jack's not like the best fighter, so you're like, oh no, Jack could
yeah.
totally die if Rogers gets him. Um, but then Flint like comes in and they double team him and beat him.
What a
Um,
scene.
but it's just
Yeah,
so good. It's like, oh, like in that moment, like Jack is because Jack is kind of like weaker. So it's like, oh, he's sort of like the underdog, like everybody likes him type thing. Plus, he's there for like the Blackbeard thingy when and Rogers like taunts him, and then
mm,
it's all good. That's why him and Rogers is like the big thing. But even like the whole last scene is about Jack and everything, and him creating the pirate flag, and the
yeah,
other girl pirate coming on board and things like that.
The other girl pirate.
In the last scene, there's like a pirate that him and Anne interview, and you like it's like some famous pirate from history that's also secretly a
right.
girl. I don't remember the name, but it's supposed to be like a tease of like
It's Arya Stark
yes,
coming from the east or whatever.
yes, she's sailing west.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
So
Jack is everybody's favorite, but at the beginning he's kind of slimy and he's kind of no good. But by the end of the first season, you're starting to see because a lot of it is because he's really funny. God, remember the scene when he goes to Eleanor's fucking Eleanor's family's place and he like announces that he's Jack Rackham in front of everybody, and they have the moment where they all look around. And it's like, oh, it's so cool. But
nope, no idea.
yikes! And you don't remember the scene where like the girl is like, I heard about Charles Vane, and she's like, and she says like Charles Vane like eats people or something, and Jack sort of just. You don't remember this, and Jack is like, "Oh, you shouldn't remember
this girl."
Everything.
I don't know. I need to see what she looks like. I mean, I'll look it up.
She's only in that one scene. I don't know. She's like Eleanor's cousin.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the girl from season 2 or whatever.
No, this is season 4 at the very end. When
nope.
When they go to Boston, this is like the setup for all the Max stuff in the end, where she's like offered by Eleanor's. You remember Eleanor's grandmother, right?
No.
She's like the best like character in the whole show. She's so cool.
You know what? I'm sure when I see her, I'll be like, oh yeah, her. But
she's
right
like
now,
old lady, and she's secretly like running shit, and like all the men suck because girl power. Oh, she offers Max like Nassau.
No.
She's gonna be your favorite when we get there. But
I can't wait.
Jack stuff at the end is so good. There's no shot you don't remember. Like that Boston stuff's like my favorite stuff.
I'm sure when I see it, I'll be like,
you'll remember it.
And I'll let you know. I'll be like, Kyle, you know what? It did happen. You're not just making all this up to trick me.
Yeah.
It'll be great.
Jack bad, then Jack good. Jack sly, then he's got his dumb sunglasses on that I didn't know they had in the pirate time.
Oh, they're so cool. I love those glasses. Man, the first scene we get of him where he's just wearing them out of nowhere, I love it. Man.
Just coming up with a scheme.
Yep. All right. So that's all the major notes. The only other section I've got is miscellaneous notes. So basically, if you have anything you want to talk about,
part of every Elite RE secondary channel thing.
It's good to hear. All right, you want to go first, or
you do miscellaneous notes, and then I'll see if I have any in how much time we have left. Because
first
one have enough time.
All right, the first one. The music is great. It really like as soon as I heard it, it took me straight back to when I first watched it, and I remembered why I liked the show so much. Music good. We already talked about this. It's a great looking show. I agree with that. Man of War is a really cool name, like for a ship. When they're like, "Oh, the Man of War's coming," I'm like, "Oh, Man of War, crazy."
You know what's always cool is when blokes refer to something they like that doesn't have a gender as a she. I don't know why. It's just so cool. They do it about the boats. People do this about horses all the time, regardless of whether or not the horses are like male or female. I know, it's just so good. It's funny.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's just cool. She's an old one. She is slap side of boat. The old lady.
Fantastic.
It's just good. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Next one. I hate watching sex scenes. There's a lot of sex scenes in this, and they're just like, I don't know. I just don't enjoy it. I'm watching it, and I'm like, yeah, I know what's happening. No character stuff's happening. They're just having sex. You know, why am I watching this?
This is a common point I hear, and I usually rail Lamau against this talking point. But there are some in this show that is like, I don't know. There's somewhere it's like funny, like Max giving the dude a hand job in like episode 2.
Yeah,
it's just like that's just like funny. And then he leaves and he goes, "Have you no decency?" As he like looks at Silver. It's just like, oh, funny irony memes. What's one that's bad? Because I remember thinking like, oh, this is like,
I don't know. I haven't listed any. I just remember like oh god, I don't even know. Just
like the Barlow one has well, I mean,
no, that one's fine. I like that.
The one with Flint is good. I've seen people complain about the priest fucking a lot, but that might just be because he's weird looking. That one's fine.
No, I don't think it's that.
The Eleanor Vane ones are great. Even the first. Well, I guess there's only one Eleanor Vane one in this one. But even them like throwing each other down, like to be on top, and sort of that playing into their power dynamic is cute.
Yeah. I don't
There
know.
are
Maybe
some.
it's like
The
maybe it's
Blackbeard
more
thing in the
like
first episode is funny, with Silver,
oh
but him like
Blackbeard, yeah.
getting swarmed by the girls. That's probably not fun. Like I feel like in theory that's like
yeah, I
a
guess.
fantasy, but I don't know. Silver's not into it though. He's just into
Yeah,
getting
his
money.
mind's in a different place. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, I think maybe it's not sex scenes that I don't like, but the length of the sex scenes. Like if they go too long, maybe that could be it. Like, and there's some long. I can't think of any, but there are some where it's like, oh, they're still going this long.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like there's always
Anyway,
examples of this, and I always have counter examples of like the Guts Castle one or something. But that's like very
yeah,
exceptionally. Um, and like those are always like character driven because I hear this all the time. Like, why are we holding on the sex scene? I feel like I have a reason for why it's usually good, but I can't
yeah.
remember it right now. But
All right. Well, next up, Max's accent is so great.
true and base.
We talked about that. All right, finally. So, Gates has an Illuminati tattoo on the back of his head.
It's just
Did you notice that?
it looks just like a Renegon eye from Naruto. But yes,
I
eye
have no
imagery
idea what that is.
is always shut up. Watch Naruto, you
Yeah,
little bitch.
yeah. Before I get more spoiled about it.
Renegon. God damn, how do you not know what that is? Everybody knows what a Renegon is. It's the pink
I know. Is it a
eye.
Rasengan or something?
No,
It's
that's an
Naruto?
attack. That's a blue ball attack. All right,
Right.
idiot.
Yep. I don't know anything. All I know is Hinata now from your video.
Yes, Hinata and Naruto, which is a good relationship.
Anyway.
That video is stupid as fuck.
I don't know.
But
Anyway.
yes, he does have an eye thingy on the back of his head.
Yeah, and it's never, we don't get any explanation. We hardly get anything from Gates, honestly. Like, we don't know anything about him. We don't know why he's friends
He
with
talks
Flint.
about being a
Like,
Navy officer in the past.
does
Him
he?
and Flint, yeah, because with Hornigold, he says like, "Oh, we used to be on like the Navy crew together," which was interesting. I didn't remember that. And I was like, man.
I thought that was Hornigold talking about him and his men.
Yeah,
I didn't
but
know he was
he
talking
like
about
says like
Gates.
that. He like says that Gates used to be on his crew.
Whoa, Kyle, I've missed something if that's the case.
Wait, how many crews
how
was
did I
Gates
miss
on?
that?
He was on Henry Avery's crew. He was on Hornigold's. I'm almost
Wait, Gates
certain.
was on Henry Avery's crew?
Yeah, because remember he's like, I saw Avery try it once when he was talking about the.
Oh, I
thing. We
thought.
talked about this earlier.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're right. Man, yeah.
I remember from Uncharted,
Right,
Henry
so,
Avery
yeah.
is 1500s and this is 1600s. So I don't know.
This is 1715. That's when this takes place.
I swear those
pilot.
fucking notes in it is 1716, yeah. I swear those fucking notes in Uncharted 4 say the 1500s. Maybe Uncharted was wrong, or maybe. Now this is just a maybe. Maybe my memory is wrong.
No way.
But
All
yeah.
right.
But also, there's another thing with Gates where he's talking with Flint about like old crew members and things like that. And I feel like there's some little backstory thing there also. But yeah, it's not super.
He talks about finding that letter and then trying to deliver it to the mother and then not finding her.
Oh yeah, and I think that was
Yeah.
in New York, which they name dropped. Cute. Remember New York before it was New York?
Yeah, I remember New York.
But yeah, I think that might have been in reference to when he was a Navy man, because I don't think. No, it was a pirate because they were like, remember this dude from our crew. So you definitely wasn't. Yeah. There's something about
crazy. Gates, there is stuff. I obviously missed the thing with the Hornigold thing.
It is interesting that it seems like a lot of them are like former Navy people. Just their lives at sea. How fun.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're seeing the most capable of the people, and they'd probably be from the Navy.
Ones that survived.
Yeah. Vane has a cool voice. We already talked about that. Wait, do you agree with that? Do you like Vane's voice?
Yes, it's very cool.
All right, good. Flint has this like outfit where he puts like a mask over his head and like ties it around his head. I don't know. I think that looks really cool.
Yeah, from like.
You agree? Love
that?
Yeah,
he does that more than just the first episode. Whenever he's on a horse and he's trying to slip away into the darkness.
And he looks legendary. He looks like a mysterious guy. All right. Next up, I never realized how few sets there are, which is interesting. Like we have Eleanor's building, like that. I don't know if it's a bar or something. We have her building.
Yeah.
We have the brothel. We have the fort, like the top of the fort. Eventually we get more. But for now we got that. We get Miranda's house.
Yeah.
We get ships, which I wouldn't.
There's like one ship interior, one ship exterior.
Yeah.
I remember this from my
And
film
then
and TV. You
there's
have to clarify exterior and interior
oh
shots in
wow, look
set
at
design
you.
thingies. Um,
Very
I feel like
impressive.
they built the whole
Um,
ships. I feel like, and they're all on like a big tank shooting thingy in a
yeah,
studio.
so they've got whenever you've got a close up of a ship, there's an actual ship, but whenever it's like sailing in the
Yes,
distance, it's
yeah,
always CGI,
yeah.
and all the water is entirely
It seems like
CGI.
some of them are like
Um,
models sometimes too, like small model things that they shoot.
maybe I'm not sure.
I
I
feel
think
like
it's
there are a
because I
few
looked at this
shots
like
where it looked like
VFX
that.
thing.
Where, oh, well,
Yeah,
you know more about this than I.
no. We don't know. You know what? At the end, we'll watch those VFX things and we'll have a look. But we also get tents on the beach. Like that's a set, I
Yes,
would
that's...
assume, and we get the streets of Nassau.
remember when Blackbeard like cuts through one? I remember that as a
The
scene.
tent? Oh yeah.
Like appears out of nowhere. Cool stuff.
Crazy stuff.
Remember
But
how he loves Charles Vane? Wacky.
yeah, I'm interested to see when we get to that because I don't remember the details of like why he loved or like
He used to
thought
be
he
on his
was the son
crew,
or
and he was
something.
his like his
Um,
funny
yeah,
bloke.
true. All right. On that sets point, I thought it was really interesting that we never really see a house besides like Miranda's house. Like, where do these people sleep? Like, do they
I think they
sleep
sleep
in
in tents,
like?
right? On the beach.
But is that the case? Like, have we ever seen anyone? I guess we've seen
I don't
Charles
think
Vane
any of
like
them
with.
own like property or anything.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely don't. But like, it's just weird that we don't see anyone. I don't know, in their downtime. Like, where are they? I don't know. Anyway, um,
Hanging out on the beach,
what is
I
this?
guess.
Oh, I have a question for you. Apparently, here. Did you
Oh.
notice that Mr. Scott like had an acting mistake, like a stutter, where he's like, he said one. I said, let me act as though I'm Mr. Scott. He said, "What one of the whores." He said that, and it wasn't like he was trying.
Huh.
It was just like a normal scene where he's randomly talking, and it was the start of a shot. So I'm like, I guess they just had like a weird acting like mistake here.
Or
It's
maybe
pretty
for
interesting.
dramatic effect, he was like, "Whoa, one of
No,
them."
definitely not. It was just like him like mid speech or something, and he just said what one of the whores. I'm like, why did he stutter? Anyway,
Okay, I don't remember this at all.
what what else is there? Oh, we talked about this before, but the scene where like Vane and Flint are in the same room, and then he cuts away, and Gates is like yelling at Flint. It's just great.
Yes, it's a funny scene.
All right, I have another question for you, which is at one point we get a letter read out from Miranda's letter. I think it's read out like when Billy's reading it. You remember that, firstly?
Yeah.
That scene? So what do you think is the best way to present a scene like that, where you've got someone reading a letter? Like, is it better to do what they did, where it's like the person who wrote the letter is speaking it? Is it better to have the person reading it, like speak it in their head or something? Or is it better to just show the words somehow? Or like, what do you think is like the best way of doing a
I
scene
get what
like
you
that?
mean when there's like different
Yeah.
ways to do this, and this thing happens a lot. Like in Harry Potter,
Yeah.
this will happen a lot. I just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're doing like a TV show or a movie or live action acting like this, or I think you should probably have the character that wrote it doing it. I think it
Hmm.
would be weird if Billy was reading it in his voice and that's what we heard.
That
Because
is
then there would
true.
just be well, I guess it is an internal monologue no matter what. Because like in anime, you have internal monologues all the time, so it's not that weird if you hear Billy like going da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
You could have it like under his breath or something, like saying it
Yeah,
subtly
but
or
then it's
something.
like
Yeah.
read it in your head, you fucking idiot.
Yeah,
I
true.
think having the person who wrote the note
Yeah.
is the best way. I feel like there's like books I've read before when I was younger where it would like you'd flip the page and then instead of on the normal like text of like how the normal book is printed, they'd have like a drawing of the letter, and I feel like that would always be some
Mm.
cool dramatic shit where the last line of the letter would be something crazy. Actually, that's in like those Uncharted games in The Last of Us where
Oh
you
wow.
find letters and shit everywhere, and you can't read them out. You just have to read them, and sometimes at the end it'll be like a
Mm.
dot dot dot, or there'll be a blood splatter or something, and it'll indicate how like the character in the letter ended up or something.
Hmm.
Cool stuff.
I
Sometimes it
should
could be a
play those
dramatic,
games.
like
Sound interesting.
yeah, scary stuff. Naughty Dog games good. Every other video game bad.
Hmm. Except for Minecraft, that's a pretty good game.
That's a fun time.
Yeah. Anyway, the storm is great. I already talked about that in my
That's
overall
like 20
thoughts.
minutes and not a whole episode. Like, are
Oh,
we have
right,
you
right,
believe?
right. Yeah, I'm gonna go check that after this.
It is.
But that, yeah.
There is, because there are scenes on the ship where it's storming, and there are scenes on the Eleanor set where it's storming, and there's a scene in the brothel where it's raining because they don't have a roof on that.
I'm telling you, yeah, and it's a whole episode.
Do they just have like the tables not rot because they just got like wooden tables there, and it's like raining on
Does
them all the
wood
time?
rot? Is that a thing?
Does it?
If it gets wet?
Honestly,
I don't know. Why would it rot?
know. I don't know. It hits it and like deteriorates, I'd think.
Wouldn't
Huh.
you know what? I have no idea.
I
I would
feel like
assume
you
like if
put-
there's like fungi or bacteria or something.
Yeah, I feel like you put like a sheen of something over like wood tables so they don't
Oh, that's a good point.
do
Yeah.
something. I don't know. I don't make things.
Yeah, I
With the
don't, I
shitty
don't know
YouTube
anything.
videos, all right? Leave me alone.
True.
That's a Mad Men line
Um,
where his dad one time is like, "You don't make things," and then it's like a big hit to Don Draper where he's like, "Man, I'm just doing ads. I don't actually make anything," and it's like, oh.
Wow,
Shut up.
what a show. Maybe I'll watch that one day.
Making YouTube videos is bad, and making tables is good. That was the point of that monologue.
Yeah, so true. All right, next, maybe my second last miscellaneous note here, which is another question of: do you think Gates was being truthful when he said that he would like smuggle Flint away before the crew would execute him?
Yeah, probably.
What do you? Yeah, I also agree
He's
with
just
that.
such a nice.
It is a bit like it is a weird like there I can see a bit of doubt there because he does give that.
Yeah, I don't know how he
to,
would get away with that.
Dufresne.
Yeah, Dufresne would be like, "Motherfucker, I know what you just did," and I don't know. They like Gates though, I guess.
True.
Oh, I
What a
love. We
man.
haven't talked about this yet, but I love how everybody's like spilling point is like, we could forgive Singleton, we could forgive the lying, but Billy, we couldn't forgive.
But not Billy.
Like,
Yeah.
like it's really cool. I didn't even like Billy that much, but it was like, oh, that's cool. I feel like my dislike for Billy.
Have you seen Billy's actor in anything else?
Yes, Dick Ontalia. I don't know.
Yeah, amen. And I've seen him in Umbrella Academy as well, which is awesome.
I can't believe I thought
what a
the
great role.
entire time that Umbrella Academy was a Resident Evil show because of in those games it's like Umbrella or something is the bad guy.
Wow, maybe it is.
I don't think it is. I feel like I said this on stream one time and everybody made fun of me.
Damn, I don't even know what Resident Evil is. I know there's like a TV show about it that everyone hates or something.
Video games, you know, Resident.
Oh yeah, I know it's a video game. I don't know like what it is. You know, like is it a pirate thing? I mean,
no, it's a horror game. What are you talking about? What are you saying here?
Resident Evil. I don't know what.
You don't know what Resident Evil is? Skinless dogs chasing you, spooky stuff, being stuck in a scary mansion. I haven't even played these games.
I guess it sounds Resident Evil. I guess that makes sense. Like an evil house or something.
Well,
anyway,
actually, that's just the English name, and the Japanese name is something different, but I forget what it is.
Oh,
Biohazard, I think? I don't know. Because the seventh game was like they flipped it. They finally called one of the Japanese games like Biohazard 7 Resident Evil, and they called it in English Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Great tangent to go on in this Black Sail.
Wait a minute, Resident Evil, is that the one with the big lady?
Yes,
in the latest.
Okay.
Yes. I know the game then. Okay, so my last miscellaneous point is about just an interesting observation I made, which is about episode 1 specifically. There's a lot going on in regards to power dynamics. So I've just listed a few here, which is that you've got the pirates versus the British. You've got Eleanor versus the drunk man at the bar, like in her introductory scene. You've got Eleanor and Vane, like their power dynamic. You've got Flint and his crew, like accusing Singleton and all that. You've got Richard Guthrie and the British guy that like he goes to who visits him. And you've got Max and Silver, which is another power dynamic. So there's just in this first episode, there's just so many power dynamics going on, which is just really interesting. It's like a theme of the episode.
True. I haven't really thought about it that much, but true. Is that all the notes you got?
Anything else? That's every single note.
Let me go through my notes here. I got like 7 in total. So the first point is just civilization and the SJW agenda reference the One Black Sails video on YouTube. We talked about this.
Yes.
Now, I never really went on my nuanced character writing, and then I put in brackets the N-word because I love saying funny things in my notes that nobody's ever going to read.
Right.
This is actually probably maybe the last point. Hold on. We'll get back to that one to see if there is any other point.
Okay.
Flint is just the greatest character of all time, true and based. The writers clearly thought through the plot motivations through every character, and sometimes it might actually be too much to keep up with. We talked about that. This scene this season with the most separated storylines, this is basically me just saying there's a bunch of separate like one-off things that really everything else in the other seasons feels very cohesive. Whereas in this one, there's the ship cleaning episode and the Vane back in his home place episode.
That is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I feel like every time
I was thinking like it's interesting that even like Flint's storyline is very segmented in this section. Like if you just think about him, like first he's on the ship and then he's back and then he's back on the ship, and it's like a very segmented kind of thing. I don't know. Anyway,
it is a bit. There's also like this is the only season with 8 episodes and the rest have 10, which means those videos are going to be even longer than this one.
Yeah.
But fuck, I had something else to say about that, but I forgot it.
Very good.
Oh, I think I was saying that might be why. Oh, when I got to like the episode where I was like, oh, this is the ship cleaning one, I was sort of like demotivated because I don't know, when it was like episode 7 and you're like not sure which scenes are in this episode, it's like more fun to rewatch. Whereas when you're like, oh, this is the ship cleaning one, I remember exactly what happened. And you're always surprised when you actually watch them because like the ship cleaning is like 20 minutes maybe of like the 60-minute runtime or whatever, because these episodes are fucking long. But
That's
I was
terrifying.
like that. But did you watch any of them like back to back to back? Because I feel like I must have when I was watching it for the first time. But like every time I would finish an episode, I was like, man, I don't want to watch another Black Sails episode for like at least a few hours. Because, like,
I think
it's a lot.
I think I watched 6 and 7 back to back.
Might be 5
and then I
and
had to
6
take a
if
break
you
for
like.
8.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
I was gonna say maybe you watched the chase ones together, but
No, I don't think so. Yeah, mainly because I had to get it done by the deadline. I was like, okay, I need to watch like, and here we are. Anyway,
we're only like a week late, and by we I mean me.
True.
Let me see. Decide for the watch of this series. I think it hinges on a lot of knowing what's coming next. I talked about this earlier about how maybe the rewatching, because so much of my enjoyment the first time through was like exciting about not being able to predict what was going to happen, that maybe on the rewatch some of those scenes that I talked about not living up to it, that might be why. But the next one is just incredible performances. Silver particularly stood out to me this season, which is another talking point I've clamored against when initially watching the series, because Silver overrated Lamau, but he's so good. He's so sly. He's a cheating little bastard. He's funny every time he shows up. He's always got something funny to say. I don't know. I liked it. All the Randall stuff, we really didn't talk about that, but like, it's all good. The classic fart joke, him like getting frustrated every time he would make like a great point to Randall, he would just respond with, "You're a thief." It's so good.
Yep.
And then the consideration that Randall might be the smartest person on this entire ship, and he's just faking being an invalid. Because he then gets to ride and doesn't have to ever fight, and just is a cook, and everybody likes him. But there's never any confirmation on that because he just farts, and because it's just good. What a scene.
But he is a genius. He has to be, right? What do you think?
No, I think it might. I don't know. I think it's like intentionally ambiguous to the point where if you think one way, it's like completely contradicted by the other way. It's a cool thing to think about. He does just get kind of killed by Vane when they fight in like the second last episode of season 2 before they team up. There's like these massive cullings of like crew members, and I'm trying to remember which. Like, I don't remember where the dude that I talked about Gates beating up, who is in love. Oh, Anne kills him, and he kills Charlotte, his favorite prostitute whore. When Anne is having like she's gone crazy for some reason. I can't remember why. Something really pissed her off. Because I remember the small bald dude drowns, and Silver is very sad about it, and he tries to like help him. I know the sword dude dies in the last episode when he's trying to kill Flint.
Ooh.
There's just like a bunch of like the side characters that I vaguely remember. I couldn't remember that one dude, but now I remember Anne kills him.
Damn.
But anyway.
Did you cry?
No. All
right.
The next one is that Morley, who is that actor must be like a big actor, because he's only in like 2 episodes and his acting is very good, and I feel like I've seen him in other things.
Yeah, true. I agree with that actually. He did stand out as like notably like
Yeah.
I don't know, Shakespearean or something. I don't know,
Yeah,
like
something like
yeah.
that. Um, he's in one shot in the pilot I did notice, but Morley was his name, was a good man who died for the Barlow Woman's agenda because he says that, but then he like dies. Oh, this goes back into the nuanced character writing thing. We'll come back to that. I got two
Mhm.
little notes here. Well, the other one, the last one is standout scenes, which we already did. I'm rewatching it, living up to certain moments in my eyes, mostly episode 7. All right, we already talked about that. Nuanced character
Mhm.
writing. Morley is
All
made
right.
to be like an antagonist, and he's kind of like undermining Flint's shit. So you're like, get rid of this dude. But then he's like super nice to Randall, and even when Randall's kind of a dick to him, he's like nice to Randall. This is when they're cleaning the ship, and like Randall's like sitting in his spot, and he's just come back from working, and obviously Randall
Mm.
doesn't have to work because he's the smartest bloke around. Even though he does work because he gets caught under the thing, which means he was helping careen the ship. You're a
Yeah.
liar, Ari, and an idiot.
Mm.
The
Unlike Randall.
Oh yes, unlike Randall, Randall's like sitting down in his spot, and Randall like gets pissy with him or something, and he's just like nice to Randall. No, he asks. I think Randall. Randall wanted like a shell or something, and Morley says he forgot,
And he's
and
like,
then
"Oh no, I forgot." Yeah,
Randall's like a
yeah.
prick to him, and is like, "You promised" or something, and he's just come
Yeah, and
back
he's like,
from
"Oh,
doing
I'm
hard
sorry,
work.
mate."
And then he's like, "All right, I'll go get it." And he does get it, and it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, he's like actually a nice bloke." Lamau, nuanced character
Yeah.
writing. Now,
That was a great scene. Yeah.
those little details. There are a lot of those little details in Black Sails where it's like these little things that make the characters unique, and you might say nuanced. The N word. Now, once upon a time,
Mm.
Ari, this might have been before your time. I talked constantly about making a video series called "The Nuanced Character Writing of Berserk," and how Berserk was the greatest thing ever because it had these little nuances in its characters, like Sonya and Irvine. Do you remember these characters?
I remember Sonya.
Sonya
Which one's
Irvine
Irvine?
is the apostle that's like the
The
furry
shiny one?
dude that she
Oh no.
rides on sometimes. Um,
No, I don't remember.
well, he's like a hunter dude, and there's just like one random scene where she's
Oh, yes, yes,
walking
yes, yes.
and she like sits
Yep.
with him by the fire and he's like nice to her. And it's like this Irvine bloke never done anything bad, apostle bad. He's like Zod, where he's never
Yep.
shown eating anybody. He's not. He never says, "I'm a rape that innocent woman over there. I'm Berserk bad guy." That's how they all sound, by the way.
Yep.
Um,
Classic.
but I always like, oh, their little dynamic is so cute, and it's such a little thing, and it's like a part of the nuanced character writing of Berserk that there's like, you didn't have to do this. Like in other series, Sonya would just be this like delusional crazy girl that everybody treats her like in the fandom anyway. So I guess character writing is
Mm.
wasted on these idiots. But Irvine could have just been another bloke, but he's like nuanced, and there's a bunch of interesting little things here that really endear him to us, and it goes a long way. Another example, there were like 3 of these videos I wanted to make. One of them was about the Queen from the not the prologue arc, Vinland Saga Poisoned.
Golden Age.
The Golden Age arc, where it's like, oh, she's fucking the king's brother and she like loved him and that's why she hates Griffith,
Mm.
and it's like a cute little thing and a little detail that didn't need to be fleshed out. And I was like, oh, it's so good, man. The Queen, so much more interesting than she could have been, or she would have been in a generic
Mm.
show. And then there's like Farnese's family is like the chief and my favorite example of this. How they're all just kind of like all right people, and like Farnese's traumatic
Mm.
childhood is just because of like neglect and her father actually being busy. And it's not because like she's
That's
abused or
pretty
anything.
funny.
And it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, her father's actually cool. Her mother's the coolest character in the entire series. Her brother's kind of an idiot, but he's got this best friend, Roderick. He's the coolest bloke to ever cool. And
Mm.
she has like other older brothers that just seem like normal sorts of blokes. And it's like, oh, they could have just been evil. And like they could have said, Farnese, you're not going on an adventure. But Farnese just like immediately when she shows up, doesn't even tell them about the adventure. She just falls back in line because she's scared of her father or anything, and it never comes up. And then they save the family, and then it's cool. And nuanced character writing is the point here. And the more I think about
Yep.
things, the more I think that this nuanced character writing is what makes my favorite shows my favorite shows.
Mm.
There's a lot of this in all my favorite shows, in Mad Men, in Boardwalk, in The Sopranos, in The Last of Us Part 2 is a big thing like this too, where it's like there's always like there are like generic character archetypes, and then there's always something like a little and weird that makes them a little bit different, and a little.
Yep.
I guess it might just be depth in character writing, where there's multiple things. That Morley example is a great thing, where it's not even really useful to the plot. It's not necessary at all. It happens in the same episode he dies, but it's like. And it would probably be easier and more cathartic for the show to just make him be like more of a prick, and then when he gets squashed, it'll be like, haha. bad guy gets squashed. But instead it's like, oh, there's more depth there. There's more feeling there. It feels realer, I guess, that people can be pricks and good people sort of on a whim. Um, there are other big examples of this that I can't think of right now. But yeah, that's sort of a big thing. Nuanced character writing. It'll be in one of the titles of my video eventually. And it's a big thing in Black Sails that I like a lot. I would think like all the subversive stuff with Eleanor in the first episode is like that too, where it's sort of like she could have been this sort of archetype here, but there's like a twist on it that makes her feel more real and authentic, I guess. But that's my nuanced character writing monologue, I think.
I love it. Good. I want to see a video on it one day.
Gotta reread Berserk. Gotta get
Man, Berserk is so good. Yeah, I want to. Goddamn, Berserk is so great.
Oh, you want to get on a reread?
So is Black Sails. Oh god, I can't commit for another reread. I got too many videos I'm making.
I've committed to 17 other rereads. I ain't doing none
crazy. Of them. Yep. Yeah, check out all our rereads if you're watching this, guys.
On the various second channels we got.
Yep. But
will Attack on Titan come out eventually? I can't believe we got all of this in one session, Ari. It was 3 hours or something, but how do you know how long it was?
It's 3 hours and 5 minutes since we've been recording.
I wonder if the next one will be shorter or faster. Shorter or faster?
Yeah, we'll
faster
see.
Or longer?
We'll see.
Shorter or longer?
Yeah.
Faster or
all right. So thank you everyone for listening. Black Sails is great.
Wait, what would you give it out of 10?
Oh boy. So I will say that I was watching Moon Knight at the same time that I was watching Black Sails. And I was just wanting to go and watch Black Sails.
Oh, okay.
So I like Black Sails a lot. Like I can't say it's a 10. I don't know. It's a 9 or a 10. I struggle to say it's a 10
that way too. I feel like it might be a 9. I feel like I would have said it was a 10, but it's still great. It feels like a lot of setup for a lot of the great moments that are coming later.
Yeah, I think that is what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
All very good.
What a show.
What
any of the last thoughts?
I still don't know what like my ranking of my favorite shows is. They're all like collectively up there, like the top 5s, which is just the shows I talk about all the time. I guess there's 4 of them. There's the 3 sister shows and Black Sails.
Yep.
But I don't know.
Right.
I can't rank them. This is like
here we go. Better Call Saul. What a show. Breaking Bad. What a show.
Yikes.
No, I don't know. I'm sure there's other ones out there. All right. Bye everyone. Thanks for listening. See you next time when we talk about season 2.